Large contingent of religious Jewry joined mass rally for Gaza on November 25th, 2023 in Ottawa, Canada. Like I told people before, I'm going to start filming more in Arizona. You just saw some scenery of 19th Avenue and Northern, the place that I've been working at a lot lately throughout this year. I don't know how long I can keep working here because, I've been very, very fortunate. I've managed to evade any conversations even with the police over here, and the police come here a lot. I don't know how long I can keep it up. Dr. Weisfeld probably doesn't think I should be filming this stuff. I'm pretty sure he thinks it makes me a target, which, yeah, but I don't know, there's a lot of scum over here, but there's a lot of enlightened people over here too, and a lot of smart people who are involved in activism. The problem is most of these people don't like cameras. I don't blame them. That's been my big drawback, is that most of these people don't like to be filmed. This next clip you're about to see, the clip you just saw, by the way, is from December 3rd, 2023, and the next clip you're going to see is from the same exact day, December 3rd, 2023. It's quite the interesting day here on December 3rd, 2023. I am unsure what time it is. I could have checked before I used this phone. I really don't like to record things on my phone, but right now this is just more of a matter of convenience. I do have a camera now. The only thing I'm a little bit hazy on is how to keep the recordings in the camera and upload it. I know it has something to do with the SD card. Yeah, but this apartment complex, this is actually, Marvin Eliyahu and Uri Adia actually had an apartment together here in that complex down there. This is actually one big complex, or it was, as I recall it. It was a complex, if I remember correctly, before May 27, 2019. As if I can recall this correctly, it was an apartment complex in some kind of transition. But within this complex, there's a lot of tension. This same complex has white power nationalists of Aryan Nation in it. It also has Mexicans who've been affiliated with the drug cartel, Mexicans that have nothing to do with the drug cartel. It has black people here. There's always this tension. But in recent time, I've been called back to this area. This basic area is at 19th Avenue and Northern. I've been doing a lot of projects here lately. Since the beginning of 2023, since the Netanyahu government started to bully the Al-Aqsa Mosque, there's been a shift in cultural demographics and the tone people use. I now work here quite frequently with Muslims and Christians of the Orient. And they're very interested in Dr. Weisfeld, and they're very interested in the Bund. And some of the people here actually knew Marvin Eliyahu and Uri Adia. So far, though, nobody that actually knew them is willing to go on record. But that's the thing, is it's everybody out here, they know what's been going on. We all know what's going on. And one of the interesting places about the ghettos of Phoenix and the lumpen proletarian of Phoenix, I would say 20% of it is conscious of the Palestine-Israel conflict to a degree that is rather high in a comparison to the rest of the Southwest. When you're dealing with the West Coast and the Southwest, it's a whole different world. Nah, it's not Jim Crow segregation you have to worry about. It's race war you have to worry about. There's extreme segregation in the prisons. If you are a Jewish European and you go to prison, according to everybody that's black, you're white, and according to everybody that's white, you're not right because you're not white, you're Jewish. It's an interesting thing, you know, but if a Jewish black person goes to prison, they are seen by everybody as black. It's just one of the things that the Boondist movement really did stand up to point out to people. I'm behind, I believe, the Bookmans. But I do a lot of work here. There's some hobos who work really hard. They take pieces of broken bicycles, fix up the bicycles, and then sell them. I guess you could say that me helping them is and sometimes it's a full-time job, but it also creates a sense of community. I don't agree with the use of meth or heroin or fentanyl blues, but I do not try to stop people from doing it who do it. I'm not going to interfere on someone because nobody here really interferes on me, and I do work with certain people here. Also, it's a highlight. Like, people see it as an asset that I'm not addicted to any heavy narcotics, so they trust me not to steal from them. It works out quite nicely. Oh yeah, I remember this stuff. Yeah, right across the street you have the Dunkin' and Donuts and Rally's Hamburgers. It's been around forever. There's an IHOP restaurant over there too. Ooh. Yeah, this year has been very strange for me. I've been working a bit over here. Ah, wow. This is also from December 3rd, 2023. So, this is where, this is basically, my own little, for a good deal of this year, this has been my particular, base of operations, and I hate that term base because, it sounds all stupid. I don't really see it that way. That's just my best way of explaining to you what this is to me. The way I actually see it is that this area is my soil. My soil of labor. I work with a lot of the hobos because one thing that somebody once asked, what's the difference between a bum and a hobo? Hobos work. Bums just sit there. It's not an absolute thing, and this is more of a local way of explaining it because what I'm saying is all localized language. I'm not expecting that other people outside here speak this way. In fact, I would also say that the way people speak out here doesn't match the way people spoke out here 20 years ago. But some would say that it's risky that I'm doing any of the kind of work I'm doing here at all, but I gather a lot of people that I know over here who are into the Free Palestine movement, but they're also into land back, a lot of them. Yeah, I will be doing more, and I have a camera so that I can do better than this. And if I'm ever feeling a protest, I don't want to use my phone because your phone could. There's too many cases of phones just mysteriously shutting off. So what I'll do in these cases is I'll have my camera. All right, Happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas, Palestine. Oh, and one Holocaust does not justify another. On December 4th. I walked all around Glendale handing out flyers. It's a flyer. It's something from the book of Samuel, the prophet Samuel. It's a leaflet Dr. Weisfeld created, and I printed out several copies, and I went around sharing it. And, while I work largely these days now at 19th Avenue Northern, I don't want to do that. I prefer to be working within Old Town Glendale, but, I've had my reasons for not doing that. But, I was walking to just go over there. I initially had this grand idea that I was gonna film a light festival, which I know is coming, but then it wasn't as big as I thought it was, and I did do some I did videotape some things, but which you'll see soon. But on my way, I saw an interesting sight. By the way, I have no context for what you're about to see. But, but this is like, you can find this all over the place, like these things happening all the time. And there's no real relevance to what I'm about to show you. It's just, kind of for my own camera testing. Also, to foreshadow what's ahead. I mean, you're going to see much more spectacular stuff, especially when it's sad. Dr. Weisfeld actually did teach me how to use the camera, and for the most part I remember, but I don't remember how to save the recording or put the recording on a computer, which I know has something to do with an SD. Anyway, let's just take a look at this. This is what I saw on the way to Old Town Glendale. Oh, by the way, yes, just so we're clear, on December 4th, 2023. For those of you who know your way around here, you get one clue. That's your only clue. One more time. By the way, I have no idea what this is about. But, this is what's interesting, why I will keep just filming stuff in Arizona. I'm just going to. I can't help. There's so much weird shit that happens out here. And no, I have no idea what this is about. Again, I have no idea what any of this is about. Now I will present you something from TRT World, which came out on the same day, although much, much earlier, December 4th, 2023. This is from TRT World, and it's very important because the only Jewish ultra-Orthodox sect that negates Judaism is Chabad Lubavitch. Chabad Lubavitch is considered to be the largest Jewish Orthodox group in the world. However, they are not only are they not Jewish, not only are they not true to being Jewish ultra-Orthodox, they're not true to being Jewish Orthodox in any context. In fact, they're not true to being Jewish at all. If you want to understand what Chabad Lubavitch operates as, it's a perfect reflection to what the early church was before it finally became Christianity. That's why, it's disturbing when everybody's looking for some sort of pre-Christianity Jesus movement. You're not going to be impressed with what you find. And for those that find solace in Jesus of Nazareth, they wouldn't like it. I mean, what do you have? Like the Ebionites and Canaanite movements, and they're all sort of pathetic, and they're still not exactly in connection with the early Jesus movement. This is why, retrospectively referring to them, the Galilean movement remains quite the mystery because there isn't going to be much documentation there. Anyway, the point being is, not only is Chabad Lubavitch not ultra-Orthodox, not only is Chabad Lubavitch not Orthodox, Chabad Lubavitch is not Jewish at all. And, countering Chabad will be easier for me to do when I'm no longer operating for the Bund. but I'm still in operation for the Bund, and I am until further notice, but my days are numbered, as I said before, because I have other plans with my life, and I feel like the Bund has really shut me out of a lot of places. But now that, and I had to do a lot of the things that I had to do, but now Bundism is very popular, so much of my work in that regard is done, but not all of it. But this is from TRT World from December 4th, 2023, and yes, let's just take a look at the connection that Benjamin Netanyahu has with the Lubavitcher Rebbe that people somehow think is the Messiah, even though he was never the Messiah, and he didn't even bring the Messiah. In fact, Rabbi Schneerson, as much as I respect a lot of the charity work he did, his actions ultimately postponed the coming of the Davidic Messiah even more so. You got to understand that if the state of Israel was dismantled today, it wouldn't help bring in the Davidic Messiah, but keeping the state of Israel would also not do that. In fact, because the state of Israel has existed for over 75 years, times that 3, that's how, like, if we were to get rid of the state of Israel right now, times that 3, that 75 years, times it 3, that's how long it would then take for the Messiah to come. Because there are certain mandates you have to follow if you believe that the Davidic Messiah, if that's who the Messiah is going to be, is that guy from the lineage of King Solomon. Well, that's all negated because of the existence of Zionism. Because remember, when the Messiah comes, everybody will want him to be Messiah, both Jewish and not Jewish. We have not created the energetic vibration worldwide for something like that to happen. In fact, the number one negator of that, if you believe in Jewish theology, would be the very existence of the state of Israel, because the state of Israel is not Israel. The state of Israel is Amalek. Anyway, please watch this. This is very, very, very informative.
The Bible says that there is a time for peace and a time for war. לעולם לא נשכח את מעשי הזוועה שעשו לנו אויבינו. אנחנו הולמים באויבינו בעוצמה חסרת תקדים. אני מדגיש, זאת רק ההתחלה. They've made a mistake of historic proportions. We will exact a price that will be remembered by them and Israel's other enemies for decades to come.
Israel has responded with fury. Fighter jets taking aim at targets in the Palestinian territory.
More than 10,000 people have been killed since this conflict began.
كل الدار فيها 1000 واحد هنا في المنطقة كلهم استشهدوا.
As the Israel-Hamas war drags on, backlash against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is growing at home. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert has heavily criticized Netanyahu.
He's the worst person to have to deal with it. I think that he is really in a nervous breakdown. A person who has portrayed himself and presented himself for many years as Mr. Security failed in the most fundamental obligation for his citizens, which is to provide them with security.
Today, Netanyahu's leadership is on the verge of imploding, deeply unpopular with his own people and under immense pressure from the international community.
La lutte doit être sans merci, mais pas sans règles.
This is a fall from grace for a man who was reportedly told by one of the most powerful Jewish religious figures in the world that he would be the one to welcome the Messiah. "40 years ago, when Netanyahu was Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, he met Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the leader of the Chabad Lubavitch movement, known simply as the Rebbe.
He said, you're going to this house of darkness, the UN, which was very, very unfriendly to Israel at the time. He called it the house of darkness. And he said, even in the greatest darkness, if you light a candle, it spreads a great light that can be seen from afar.
The Rebbe reportedly believed Netanyahu had a mission from God to prepare Israel for the coming of the Messiah, or in Hebrew, the Moshiach. Over the next decade, the two men developed a close relationship. Soon after entering Israel's parliament for the first time, Netanyahu paid his respects to his mentor.
אני פעל מבחינת מעשה לאדם מבחינת מעשה. ואני מתכוון לחזור אליך.
אתה תצטרך להיסעדי כמאיר ותשע עשר אנשים. לבד ותסרש לי, כאילו שהקודש ברוך הוא לצד הזה.
Back then, Netanyahu was probably the only ally that he could work with in Israeli politics. He obviously demands from Netanyahu to take some steps to hasten the coming of Messiah, which is to make Israel a more religious place and to take certain concrete steps in this regard. And Netanyahu says, I'm definitely doing that.
מה שישראל לאחרונה נמצאו כמה עניינים. מה שלא יאות, וגם משהו שעדיין משאיר ליבו. אז הייתה משהו במה ידיעתו.
עושים.
הכנראה שהיא מספיק, כאילו שהיום כבר כמה שעות בגלל ועדיין ליבו.
The Rebbe never visited Israel, not once, and yet from his home in Brooklyn, he was able to influence Israeli politics.
הבטיחו לי בוודאי כמה הבטחה שמכל השיחות תהיינה כל עניינים של ויתור על שטחים.
His influence was recognized by American politicians too. US presidents paid homage to him, establishing and proclaiming a National Education and Sharing Day in honor of his birthday.
And please give my warmest regards to the Rebbe on this his 86th birthday.
Menachem Mendel Schneerson was born in 1902 in the Black Sea port of Nikolaev, which was part of the Russian Empire but now part of Ukraine. He and his wife lived in Berlin and Paris before fleeing the Nazis in 1941, seeking refuge in New York, where they put down roots. A decade later, in 1951, he took over the Chabad movement from his father-in-law, who died the previous year. Menachem Schneerson revived and grew the movement for over 40 years until his death in New York in 1994. His followers in Brooklyn were devastated.
Most of them believed he would never die. They still believe Rabbi Menachem Schneerson will be physically resurrected as Mashiach, the Messiah.
A physical resurrection when he's going to come back in his full glory imminently and redeem the entire world.
Currently, the center of the Chabadic movement is in Brooklyn, in a neighborhood called Crown Heights. So it is an American movement in terms of its center, but it is also a global movement. One of the biggest purposes of Chabad is to bring those quote-unquote lost Jews back into Judaism. So Chabad has its own rabbis and emissaries appointed all around the world. It is a global movement.
Headquartered in Brooklyn, the Chabad movement has a presence in every state in America and in over 100 countries around the world, with a particularly high focus in Europe and in Israel. It has hundreds of thousands of followers and runs synagogues, schools, drug rehabilitation centers, and care homes. On the face of it, the movement has been for the betterment of Jews around the world. But according to one analyst, its modus operandi has provided a template for a terror group.
We have good reasons to believe that Fatah got inspired from the Chabad movement. One of the high-ranking members of the Fatah movement was praising the Chabad movement in the sense that the Chabad used to send its emissaries and rabbis all around the world, just like Fatah was doing, sending out teachers to Central Asia and to Africa and to other parts of the world.
For over 40 years, the charismatic Rebbe led the movement. His $1 donations, including to Netanyahu, came with a blessing to his followers and a reminder to give to those less fortunate. A couple of years after this meeting, the Rebbe reportedly told a young Netanyahu that he would one day become Prime Minister of Israel and would be the nation's last leader before handing the scepter to the Messiah. This first part of the Rebbe's prediction came true in 1996, when a 47-year-old Benjamin Netanyahu became Prime Minister for the first time. But his government fell just 3 years later. For a while, Netanyahu withdrew from politics. The Rebbe's words faded into history until a decade later, Netanyahu became Prime Minister for a second time.
העם רוצה שינוי. העם רוצה ללכת בדרך אחרת. הדרך שלנו ניצחה. היא הדרך שתוביל את העם.
Netanyahu's second premiership lasted for over 12 years, until he was eventually ousted by his political opponents. Another setback for anyone who believed in the Rebbe's messianic prophecy. But Netanyahu was back just a few months later, forming a coalition with ultra-Orthodox and religious Zionist parties. He began his third premiership almost exactly a year ago. And it's been a tumultuous year. His hardline government has massively accelerated the construction of Israeli settlements in the West Bank, considered illegal under international law. It's also provoked massive protests by attempting to grab more power for itself at the expense of other branches of government. The protests threatened to bring down Netanyahu's government. But then, on October 7th, everything changed.
Breaking news out of Israel this morning, where Hamas has launched a surprise attack.
A massive surprise attack.
Hundreds of Hamas fighters poured across breached border points.
They attacked by air, land and sea, taking Israel by surprise.
With many in his own country blaming him for the worst security failure in Israel's history, Netanyahu is once again relying on religious language to rally the country.
The Bible says that there is a time for peace and a time for war. This is a time for war.
That kind of language is recognized by evangelical Christians in the United States, who are still able to influence US policy in the Middle East.
Netanyahu took that Bible verse from Ecclesiastes 3.
Netanyahu spent many years living and working in the United States and has always believed in his ability to influence America.
אבל אנחנו הולכים למסלול התנגשות עם הממשל האמריקאי. ארצות הברית זה לא מקשה אחת, זה לא מקשה אחת. יש את הסנאט, יש את הקונגרס, יש את הכוח היהודי שהוא עצום, יותר חזק משהיה אי פעם. יש דעת קהל, יש לנו כוחות כבירים בדעת הקהל שמתנגדים למדיניות הזאת, גדולי הפרשנים. אמריקה לא תכפה עלינו דבר, אם לא נפגע.
And today, his relationship with President Joe Biden may not be perfect, but that confidence, at least outwardly, is still there.
בשיחותיי עם הנשיא ביידן ועם מנהיגים אחרים בעולם, ובמאמצים רבים אחרים, אנחנו מגייסים לישראל תמיכה בינלאומית כבירה. אנחנו מבטיחים את המשך המלחמה עם עוד תחמושת שמגיעה לארץ, עוד אמצעי לחימה. אנחנו נחסל את החמאס, אנחנו נביא ניצחון.
Today, Netanyahu compares his war with Hamas to Israel's battle with the Amalek in the Old Testament.
You must remember what Amalek has done to you, says our Holy Bible, and we do remember and we are fighting.
The Amalek was one of Israel's arch enemies, and in some parts of the Old Testament, God commanded they should be destroyed. Some commentators believe this is what Netanyahu is signaling with his biblical references.
Amalek is a sign of people what was evil people, and they try to take away Jewish people from God, to divide them from God and to take them away from God. He's doing the same thing what Amalek has done. He's doing what Amalek has done. So how he coming to speak in the name of the Torah, in the name of the Jewish religion, when he don't believe in the Torah, he don't believe in God?
Benjamin Netanyahu is known to be a secular Jew, but he certainly saw the value in being associated with the Rebbe, whose presence is still felt in Israel even 30 years after his death. Sitting alongside his Zionist and ultra-Orthodox allies, Netanyahu may or may not believe in God, but he certainly believes in retribution, visiting violence of biblical proportions upon the people of Gaza.
Anyway, as I had said before, December 4th, 2023, I gave out flyers about the prophet Samuel. This is something that Dr. Weisfeld wrote in protest to the ongoing Holocaust being performed upon Gaza. I had actually gotten every one of those flyers out to somebody. But because, see, I don't really want to work at 19th Avenue and Northern. I do that more out of necessity. That filming you saw of the complex, that's the closest I've gotten to the complex. I stay more closer within the plaza next to the complex. I dread going to that complex. The memories often flood back. You know, and and I understand why, but I'm angry at the people that refuse to be on camera or provide testimony or at least let their voice be heard in recording. I'm talking about people who knew Marvin Eliyahu and Uri Adia. I am very, you know, I'm one to be upset because, see, at the same time, like, I don't want to be filmed unless I'm in the black bloc. And, you know, everybody that I know that goes to a lot of the protests who show up at 19th Avenue Northern, they also only show up in black bloc. I swear I will be able to get people who will be on record for certain things. I don't know about the massacre of May 27, 2019. I know people who knew what happened, but they don't talk. I know some people came to Dr. Weisfeld with affidavits. I have no clue who these people are, and he won't tell me. And, you know, if I understand the process of him getting them was rather secretive, and it should be secretive. The plausible deniability for him helps, but, like, I have no idea who gave him those affidavits that he collected on the massacre. But anyway, let me start with showing you my Siddur, because I travel typically with backpack. I especially do this since the murder of my friends. I travel on backpack. I travel on foot with my backpack. I prefer not to take the bus because it's crowded and my claustrophobia doesn't, you know, vibe well with it. But I do take the bus. I'm going to be videotaping for you a lot of things, the light rail and all kinds of stuff, everything that's actually out here and the stuff that can happen. But here it's nighttime. You know, I had been doing stuff all over Glendale this day. Particularly since 2 o'clock. Yeah, since 2 o'clock afternoon of December 4th, 2023. And here we go, where I basically show you Old Town Glendale, but I start by showing you, my Siddur. Alright, so this is me in real life, but I'm not ready to start showing my face for a lot of reasons. A lot of people have been looking for me. This is what I read wherever I go, and it's in with me in my backpack. I'm getting a lot of strange looks, so I can't stay here like this very much longer. Because, you know, there's all that suspicion around Black Bloc, despite the fact that we should keep masks on because, as is already known, COVID is a thing. By the way, that Siddur that I have comes from the West African Jews of the diaspora. By the way, this is all Old Town Glendale. This would be the season for this sort of thing. Looks like the people in here are definitely having a lot better time than the people of Gaza. That's for sure. Trying not to videotape anybody directly because I know I wouldn't want to be videotaped, so I'm trying to keep this more at a vague distance. It's the way somebody's back is turned, but you should get the regular idea of what this is. Oh, by the way, this is the library. Every library in Phoenix and Glendale, to me, is like a temple, my own personal temple, to be treated with the utmost sacredness. I have other temples too. But, you know, being an interfaith cleric, you know, who tries to help people with their own religions, that means, like, if you're Christian, I'll try to help you with your own religion, and if you're Muslim, I'll try to help you with your own religion, if you're having trouble with your religion. But I'll also explain what fabricated Christianity and Islam. And Judaism is not fabricated, and I'm not trying to talk shit about Muslims or Christians, that's not the point. It's just that there should be some understanding of certain things, but anyway, I'm getting off sidetrack. This is Old Town Glendale at night when they do the lights. I think they're getting ready for a lights festival, I'm not sure. I think that perhaps this is a great time to go into what I know is one of the older, really older buildings. I don't know how much older, but this is the first United Methodist Church. I don't claim to be very friendly with Methodists, Presbyterians, Calvinists, Lutherans, Episcopalians necessary. However, if you go to the documentary Jewish Bundist Diaspora Movement, our policies are mentioned. However, there's other positions, like such as if there's different kinds of Baptists and Pentecostals. So the Baptists and Pentecostal that we typically take issue with are the evangelical ones. But this is a very, 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 very old church building. I mean, the proper term would be a Catholic term, parish, because a church isn't exactly a building. It's that a church centers around a building because the building is the community center. So church is not really building. The name of the building is parish or cathedral if it's sanctioned by the Pope. But this is a Methodist church. There are, again, I'm trying not to film certain people because I wouldn't want to be filmed. So this tour here I'm giving you of something I've been aware of for a while. I have no idea what the United Methodist Church's position is on Zion. They probably favor two-state solution, which kind of sucks because the two-state solution is genocide upon the Palestinian people. The one-state solution is not very imaginative. It lacks imagination, but it's still better than the one Israel state solution, and it's definitely better than the two-state solution. So I'm okay with people who are for the one Palestinian state, but I think the federation concept is better because it would definitely guarantee the rights of lands to the Palestinians, and for the displaced Hebrews, you know, it could provide an answer as well. But of course, it won't give them territorial rights. There's no need for territorial rights in the Holy Land except for the Palestinians themselves. And one of the reasons for this is because Palestine is innately Jewish, Christian, and Muslim, also not being a threat to atheists. That means atheists who stay Christian or Jewish or atheists that don't subscribe to any religion, they are not in peril in Palestine. So you got to get rid of this notion that there's some sort of cultural theocracy in the Western Orient, because it's not exactly true. That's why the word theocracy should be put a bit on historical trial to see the validity of how accurate that is to say something like that, to call something like that. There's a cluster of petty bourgeois ownerships or rentaling from these historic houses, because in Old Town Glendale there was a successful attempt to preserve all the old original buildings of the original old Glendale, and it has been quite fruitful for them. I think I can leave it here. Upon looking at the recordings I had done, I realized you didn't get a very good look at my Siddur. My Siddur, you know, for my own Judaism, is it's a Siddur by the West African Jews of the diaspora. And, you know, No, I'm not part of Khrushchev or anything. You should be able to tell because of the fact that I'm not African. But I do. I mean, the only surviving group of Khrushchev is the West African Jews of the diaspora, and there's the work they do is very good. And yeah, my family's rabbi. I mean, there's the rabbis we follow. There's the up to par, interpretations we follow. I'm talking about me and my family. And then there's our rabbi. Our rabbi is a black rabbi, Rabbi Yehuda Moshe. He is the spokesman, the face of the West African Jews of the diaspora. And so here is my Siddur, me showing you my Siddur. I'm no longer in Old Town Glendale. I'm actually closer to a Walmart in this next clip. Yeah, I just realized that you probably didn't get a really good look at my Siddur. Now, what is a Siddur? A Siddur is a Jewish prayer book, which Jewish people often carry with them, which has all the essential prayers that Jewish people are supposed to pray. The Sabbath and weekly prayers, a Siddur Hakmath, Israel, Sabbath and weekly prayers. Israel in the context of the Jewish diaspora nation, not the Zionist state of Israel. This is from the, I should show you which sect does this. So it's the Siddur, according to the customs of the West African Jews of the diaspora. Rabbi David Feldman speaking at rally outside the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. on December 1st, 2023, condemning the resumption of the recent genocide in Gaza. Very good video, please watch.
We are standing here with broken hearts. We are outraged when we are seeing this morning this escalation of this genocide going on in Gaza. We are seeing already for weeks innocent men, women and children being mass murdered. A continuation of this decades-long brutal occupation. We, as human beings, are standing up throughout the world to condemn all what is taking place. We are standing here in front of this building, calling out and condemning all what is being perpetrated. We as Jewish people are even more disturbed and pained. We are embarrassed when all of this is being done, supposedly in our name. Our religion, the Jewish religion, is sadly being misused to justify all these crimes. But we say, shame, right? Shame! But we need to realize that the state of Israel, as was mentioned before, the state of Israel in no way represents world Jewry, and certainly doesn't represent the Jewish religion. According to Judaism, all of this is criminal. All of this is forbidden. This philosophy of building a sovereign homeland for Jews is contrary to basics of Jewish belief. Killing and stealing, oppressing an entire people. What we are witnessing for so long is not just a violation of international law. This is a true violation of Judaism, and we should stand up and condemn it and stop it. So, how sad when we hear, just in these days, when American politicians stand up and say that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. This doesn't make any sense. We just need to realize how different Judaism is from Zionism, and how the state of Israel does not represent us. We need to remember that Jewish people live in peace in Muslim countries, and Palestine was a beautiful example, and we appreciate that. We appreciate the love that is being extended here today to the Jewish people, and that we as Jewish people experience in every place where we go when we meet Muslims, whether it's in the West or in the East or in Africa. I do this already for decades. I meet so many political leaders, governmental leaders, religious leaders, ordinary people from one end of the world to the other. We visited Gaza after the beginning of the siege. Not even once, not even one individual will say to us a bad word. This is what we appreciate as Jewish people. This is what we as Americans should realize and wake up, that Palestine is not the enemy of the Jewish people, neither the enemy of the United States of America. Palestine is here to stand up for their deserved rights, and we should encourage that, and we should stand up for humanity, and we should stand up for justice, and we should stand up for the Jewish people, because this occupation is not only a Nakba catastrophe for Palestine, this is a danger for the Jewish people as well. When the Zionist propaganda conflates Judaism with Zionism, when we hear politicians saying that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitic, guess what that message gives? This is a message that all Jews are accountable to these crimes committed, which are against our will. We don't agree to that, we don't support it, and we condemn it in the strongest terms. Yes! Certainly we are standing here for a ceasefire. Certainly we desperately need a ceasefire today. But a ceasefire is way not enough. We need an end to this entire occupation. Because if we want to see safety and security for all, we need to realize what is the root cause to this conflict. The root cause is not the difference of religions. We had a difference of religions for the longest time, and this was not a cause for conflict. It is the brutal occupation of Palestine, this unjust occupation, this anti-Jewish state of Israel, which is sadly causing this endless river of bloodshed where everyone suffers. We need to end this occupation in its entirety. We hope, we pray to God that this stops peacefully with no more suffering of anyone. And at that time, we hope to be able to see that beautiful peace that did exist in Palestine. Let's hope we see this in the future, soon in our days, inshallah, God willing. Thank you very much. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
And we have another video of Rabbi Dovid Feldman from Neturei Karta International speaking at Rally for Gaza on November 3rd, 2023 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening all. We are standing here on the streets of Philadelphia while we are witnessing this resumption of this genocide taking place in Gaza, where we witness masses of innocent men, women and children being mass murdered. As human beings, we are out here tonight to denounce, to condemn all what is going on. As Jewish people, we are so embarrassed when all of this is being done supposedly in our name. And sadly, our religion is being misused to justify all these crimes. No, all of this is criminal. All of this is against Judaism. The concept of building a sovereign homeland for Jews is contrary to basics of Jewish belief. For the past 2,000 years, Jews are in a divinely decreed exile according to our belief, and we are forbidden to form our own sovereignty, especially when this is oppressing an entire people, killing and stealing. These crimes are not only criminal according to international law, these are true crimes in Judaism and Jewish law. How sad when we see politicians standing up and claiming that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. This is ridiculous. Doesn't make any sense. We always have to remember the great difference between Judaism and Zionism. Judaism is a religion only. No politics, no nationalism to it. While Zionism is a purely political movement and in no way represents world Jewry or the Jewish religion. We have to remember that Jewish people lived in peace in many Muslim countries. Palestine was an excellent example. Still, to the present day, if you approach Palestinian people here tonight or wherever they are, including in Gaza, they would say that they have nothing against the Jewish people, neither against the Jewish religion. They are against the occupation. And we all, here in the West, we all, the world over, should recognize that the Palestinians deserve justice. We are so pained when we witness this endless cycle of bloodshed going on for decades, where everyone suffers. This is not something that anyone appreciates. No one wants to see bloodshed. No one wants to see suffering of anyone. If we are truly concerned of the safety and security of all, we must realize what is the root cause to this endless river of bloodshed. The root cause is not the difference of religions. We had differences of religions for the longest time, and it wasn't a cause for conflict. It is the occupation of Palestine. This brutal, illegal, unjust, and anti-Jewish occupation of Palestine, which is unfortunately not only causing this catastrophe, this Nakba for the Palestinian people, but also danger to the Jewish people. In order to see a better future, we have to stop this occupation in its entirety. Yes. Yes, we desperately need a ceasefire, but the ceasefire is way not enough. We have to end this occupation in its entirety. We hope that this ends peacefully, with no more suffering of anyone. Enough is enough. We had enough suffering, and we hope once this obstacle to peace stops, we hope to see once again that beautiful peace that did exist in Palestine. Let's hope we see this in the future, God willing. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Judaism, yes. Zionism, no. The state of Israel must go.
The state of Israel must go.
Thank you.
Now we must go to the podcast, the podcast known as Here and Now, which is on Dr. Weisfeld's channel. The headlines, the description of it reads, "The revolutionary war against Zionism is now an international movement against the Zionist ideology hold on the Occidental Western states, governments, and public media. The stated goal of the Zionist government is the annihilation of the Palestinian people in Gaza and also in the West Bank, whether by immediate extermination or exile. The Zionist project is now exposed as having originated by a series of massacres beginning in 1947, which established the Zionist state and continued to expand until it was forced to retreat from the Sinai, from Lebanon, and from Gaza. The fallacy of Zionist claims is now exposed in real time as a Nakba 2 is attempted before the entire world's view and condemnation.
Yes, here and now we are here to talk about the continuing war and ceasefire in Palestine, Gaza, and the shockwaves that it has sent throughout the whole world. You know, even the United States of America is feeling the impact of this revolutionary war. It's not just, insurrection. This is revolutionary war.
Yeah, there have been demonstrations. I found out that a few weeks or two ago, there was a big to-do in the State Department. People were sending letters to the State Department stating their opposition to what was going on. This is within the government. This is unprecedented. It's only because we have this type of government here that the government wasn't brought down. Because usually when you have people resigning or issuing letters of protest within the government, that usually can force the government to call new elections. But the United States system is not like that. But I found that there have been some struggle even within the government itself, within employees of the State Department and within the White House, that basically the bombing of the hospitals, I think, did it. I think that the random murder of Palestinians in and of itself might not shake people, but the hospital bombings did shake people. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's where the Israel crossed the line of at least, let's say, mainstream civil society. The activist core, those who are opposed to the Zionist state from the left, who support Palestinian self-determination and revolution from the left. None of this surprises us, I don't think. It's what Israel's always done. But now it's so open, and they're using the boogeyman of Hamas to justify mass murder. I'm sorry. If one native tribe scalped a population of settlers in Oklahoma, that does not just justify the Trail of Tears.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Besides, scalping was started by the colonialists when they were scalping the indigenous men's, hair because it was so long. Yeah,
exactly. So when the tables were turned, oh no, they're scalping us. Oh no,
Really,
really,
yeah. The victim is not supposed to fight back or something like that. I don't know.
No, you're not supposed to fight. That's the thing, Abraham. The oppressed peoples are not supposed to fight back. Yeah. And I'm not going to see. Let me tell you something. We had Thanksgiving in the United States in its territories Thursday, and I have to say, the images from Gaza really made for me a very dampened Thanksgiving. I mean, those images from Gaza are nothing to celebrate.
Yeah.
It's hard to have that. It's hard to have that in the back of your mind, and you're sitting down picking yourself out with food. It's not. It just doesn't. It just doesn't.
Celebrating a victory over the indigenous nations.
Well, that's why people who are, I would say, socially progressive or historically progressive, cannot celebrate Thanksgiving. Oh, well, the Pilgrims had a meal with the no, don't, sorry, just no. No, that didn't happen. If it did happen, there was some subterfuge going on. It has to be for you people to get together for some kind of this social meal. That's all it can be. But the Thanksgiving, the Pilgrims and the Indians and all this nonsense, we broke bread. No. Sorry.
Yeah.
The history doesn't bear that out.
History is still there, like Wall Street was the wall against the native people. to separate, the fort of New York. It was not a city, it was a fort with a wall. And that's why it's called Wall Street. That's where it came from. Yeah. I was thinking when you were talking about, the disillusionment of the liberal middle class opinion, about Zionism, the hospital bombing, broke the mental, hold that it had over them, because at first they believed it, that it wasn't, the Israel Air Force, that had done it. They believed, that it was, like Islamic Jihad, misfired missile or something like that. And then Israel kept on doing it, so they kept on bombing other hospitals as well, with no excuse whatsoever, like they figured they could get away with it, one time when, like, why not, like continue, So then they realized, they were duped, and then they thought, like, wow, the initial rationalization for the war in Gaza was the 40 beheaded, burnt babies. And maybe that's not true either. And so then they go, look for the proof, like finally, besides, the word of some supposed eyewitness who heard some supposed eyewitness, and then there was no proof. So then you realize, even the United Nations Security Council had resolutions that were formulated, with reference to, to the atrocities perpetuated by the Hamas, terrorists. Sometimes they would add the word terrorist. Okay, but it was the atrocities committed by, as if it was assumed without any proof. And now all that has come crumbling down. Now there's a ceasefire, although Israel is not letting food in to the northern Gaza. They want to annex it right away. So that's put a hick into the whole process of Hamas releasing some more, prisoners who they wanted to release in the first place, because they didn't want to hold, the civilians. They want to hold the soldiers and the generals. I hear from Ahmed, they have 3 generals. Yes. And they're going to extract a big price for those. And, and if Israel doesn't concede, the release of the Palestinian prisoners in exchange for these, soldiers, then, this whole military is going to be disillusioned, with what the state is doing and who they're loyal to. If the state is not loyal to the military, why should the military be loyal to the state? Like it graces a whole conundrum. Yeah.
True. I did not know there were any generals being held.
Yes, I heard one, the major general, of the whole Gaza defense line there. And Ahmed told me that there was 3 actually, like lesser generals as well. A lot of generals floating around there. Yeah. So
well, that's an interesting turn, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. That was the whole strategy, to get these military hostages that they could exchange for the, at the time, 5,000 Palestinian prisoners. Well, now it's 7,000. 2,000 more, mainly from the West Bank, are now in prison. Probably some of them are my friends too. So, they're going to have to be released. But they don't want, to exchange prisoners. They want to continue with the war. They want to go right, as far as they can, complete, eradication of the Palestinians by one way or another.
The way I see it, my view could be wrong, because I don't know of the ability of the tactical plans of Islamic Jihad or Hamas or the other Palestinian resistance forces. I don't know of their plans and their capacity. I don't know. Yeah. But to me, Israel wants to kill civilians and bomb civilian infrastructure. That is the war. If they run into resistance fighters, if you've noticed, they usually stay inside their armored personnel vehicles or they use their tanks. They're not really trying to come out into an urban area, and because they have no cover besides their tanks to hide. So I do think that, and I could be wrong about this. Well, a couple of days ago, someone asked me a question, and I reserved judgment until I got facts. They asked me what I think was going to happen with the ceasefire, and I said to myself, Israel is like the United States. There's never a ceasefire treaty that they haven't broken. So I predicted they will continue to do things during the ceasefire, and they have continued to mobilize. So I do think that they want war, not to fight the resistance fighters necessarily, but to destroy infrastructure, to destroy buildings, hospitals, schools. I mean, I think when they run across tunnels, when they run across fighters, they will engage them. But I do think that the offensive is about infrastructure and pushing people out of Israel proper into Egypt or Jordan or some other country. Now, the United States did the same thing to Native people in the 1800s and 1900s. The United States waged war against Native people, pushed them from the southeast, from Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia area, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, pushed them west to Oklahoma. Then and that was supposed to be Native territory. Then it became a state. So just like the United States did the same thing to Native people, is what Israel is doing to the Palestinians right now. There is no difference except the United States. I mean, it really is no difference, except that in Israel they want to push them out of the country. The United States pushed them to a territory and then made that territory state. Therefore, the Native people had no quote unquote native country. So I think I was watching something a few days ago, and it just dawned on me that the parallels are quite similar. So we'll have to see what Israel does. I just think that they say they want to fight Hamas and end Hamas, which they really can't do because if say they quote destroy Hamas, other resistance forces are going to emerge. You can't keep your neck on people and expect them to not fight back. It's just the way that goes. I mean, they may wait till your boot is off their neck, and they go to the hospital and get fixed. Then they'll come back and fight you. That's how that goes. So
well, that's what happened in Lebanon. There was the 5,000 PLO fighters in Lebanon that were resisting rather minimally, but Israel went in there to wipe them out, and invaded all of Lebanon all the way up to Beirut. And then that resulted in the massacre of the Palestinian refugees in Sabra Shatila, where I wrote my first book when I was working at the Palestine Embassy in Ottawa, 1982 to 85. That's what they did. They came in there and they allowed, the Palestinians to be massacred. And the Phalangists, local Palestinian Christian militia was used by Israel as their mercenaries to do so. 3,000 killed in 3 days. Yeah. And now what's happening? Oh, I made a painting for my picket line at the Jewish Center tomorrow. Let me show you the painting that I'm going to hold now.
Good.
Here it is. This puts it rather succinctly.
One Holocaust does not, I can't read it, does not justify another. Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah. Yes, correct. That's very good.
Let me. It's not showing up right.
It's. I think it's because of your screen.
Yeah.
Your screen thing. Yeah. You have to turn it off, and then you can see. Yeah. There you go. It's better. It's not. Yeah.
Oh, because it's moving.
It looks good. One Holocaust does not justify another one. Yep.
There it is.
Yep. As well as nice print job, nice colors.
Yeah, the real colors. And then at the bottom, I put the website for the Jewish Socialist Bund. But although I've helped organize the Jewish opposition to Zionism, in 3 cities now, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. The Jewish activists, groups that that have sprung up, they can do their activism, but they don't include me, because I'm too far gone for them, because they either come from, CP, red diaper baby background, or anarchist or Marxist of some sort, and they don't, accept, that there would be a Bund, like they're, they sort of, treat the Bund, like it was a historical fact, and that brought honor to the Jewish working class, of Eastern Europe, but it should not exist anymore. Even though it does, so they try to ignore me, and I've gotten no support from the bigger Jewish opposition groups, that are dominated by ex-CPers and ex-Trotskyists and Marxists of what sort. I even got expelled from the Marxist mail email list. The Ukraine was bad enough, but now Gaza, they couldn't take that. So I'm gone.
Ukraine was too much. Oh my God! Now Gaza, get out of here.
Yeah.
No, this phenomenon you're talking about, Abraham, does concern me.
I'm alone there. Yeah, I'm alone on the picket line. Like for 3 times now.
No one should be alone on the picket line. First of all, that shouldn't happen. Okay.
Yeah.
Second thing, we're talking about building united fronts. We have to find what we unite around and then organize our forces against that.
Well, we do have a united front, like in the broad, like a Palestine Solidarity Movement, that's achieved. But to do work inside the Jewish community, that's very problematic. Either they're too scared to do it or they're too sectarian to do it, and one sort of feeds the other. So, I'm there, like on my own. And the only protection I have is the cops sitting in there, that's so funny.
No, I just want to be very critical about this because let me tell you why I have this kind of staunch position on this now. Here in the United States, like you just mentioned, the Russian military defense of the Russian population and against the fascist movement in Ukraine didn't bode too well for leftists in the United States.
Yeah.
They saw it as an invasion as opposed to a geopolitical move that had some long-term implications. They didn't see it that way. Well, Russia's a capitalist country, they're invading, therefore they're wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
History isn't necessarily always based on those kind of lines. So there's other things that are coming into play. So when it comes to Israel versus the Palestinians, which is what it's about, it's Israel versus the Palestinians. There was Hamas did this, and now the word's coming out that all the lies that came out about what Hamas did on the 7th of October, the lies are now being exposed. The mistruths are being opened. But because they're so hostile to Hamas as a Muslim political military organization, they could not unite with someone who's outside of that view. This is what it comes down to. They would say, well, basically it's like this, Abraham, at least with the United States, and I'm not advocating anything, but if someone is charged with using quote unquote force or quote unquote violence against someone in the pursuit of a political objective, you're simply ghosted. Oh no, we can't have that. Yet the government can use any type of military, any kind of armed self-defense they want. Everyone says, oh, it's so wrong. So it just seems to me, in your situation, those groups are doing the same thing. And because you're associated with the Bund, they want to distance themselves from you. You're associated with the Bund is not the issue. The issue is defending the Palestinian people and the Arab people in the Middle East, right?
Yeah.
To be free of military aggression by the United States through Israel.
Yeah. That's what I
the
don't
issue.
understand about them, like intervening directly in the Jewish community should be, like a key sort of element, to undoing Zionism, because, that's where the problem is, if the Jewish people turn against Zionism, collapses.
It collapses. It collapses overnight. It's over.
Yeah.
It's over. It's literally if there's no support, if they have no base, they don't have a base to work within, it dies.
Yeah. And the protesters, they're just the young people without money, so they don't count, as far as internal Jewish politics is concerned, because they've got a hold. The Zionist parties, they have a hold, infiltrated every single organization. It's really incredible.
But we have to worry. We have to wonder, though. I mean, well, and I don't know the dynamics of the Jewish community, but I have to wonder now: is it not time to turn that upside down? Because you have money, you control this movement. You control your tendency within the Jewish community. Is that what's dominant? I don't think so. Somebody's got to challenge that. Someone's got to say the Jewish workers, the Jewish butlers, the Jewish carpenters, the Jewish house maids, the Jewish plumbers, the Jewish school teachers, the people who are on the bottom of us, who are supposedly on the bottom of society, are actually the ones who need to speak up.
Yeah,
and say because this violence of Israel, disregard Hamas for a second. Just disregard that nonsense. This violence does not reflect what we aim for Israel to be, or for our people to be associated with.
Yeah.
Period. Once that is said, and that begins to resonate, that's what those youth represent. The so-called statement, "Not in our name."
Mm-hmm.
That they represent not in our name, and I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And let's think about all this money. Well, I think that needs to be, frankly, challenged. I think that needs to be challenged up for the United States. If it is true that another nation can come to your Congress and buy you off, then that shit needs to be outlawed. They need to be put in fucking jail. And those Congress people need to be unseated.
Yeah.
Because in most parts of the world, you can't pull that off, man. No, you cannot. You cannot openly. Not openly. You have to do it. You have to do it covertly, through grants, through nonprofits, through NGO. Through some assistance program. Not openly will come buy you off. That has to end, and that has to come from the Jewish community.
Yeah,
if it comes from outside, that has to come from those youth and those militants and the good people who don't want their name associated with this kind of bloodshed.
Yeah.
This is making Israel. This is making the Star of David look real bad around the world. I'm serious. It is. It's making the whole Star of David idea look bad. You're making enemies. Really making enemies now. Every bomb you drop, every hospital you destroy, every child you arrest, every person you kill, you're looking bad. The whole idea is looking bad. It ain't looking good, man. You're making too many enemies. And I think that's what the people. I didn't see the letters within the State Department. I didn't see it, but it had to have said that. The United States is looking really bad too, really bad. United States, because all the bombs come from here. All that aid comes from here.
This all amounts to a class question, because it's the Jewish national bourgeoisie that is pro-Zionist, that wants their own state, to secure their own interests and their own wealth. And, they're dominating every sort of, aspect of the Jewish community. The Canadian Jewish Congress was shut down for the lack of funding by the the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs.
There you go.
And then they took over the Combined Jewish Appeal, which is like the taxing agency of the internal Jewish community for donations. And they just use, 35% of that, they sent to Israel right away, for social services there, because they're lacking the money, because it's going into the military. And then the rest, they just use, to set up, employees who are Zionists, and with a nice salary in various organizations to ostensibly run the organizations, but actually what they're doing is just acting as a filter for Zionist propaganda. And so, all that has got to be challenged. In the United States, there's still the American Jewish Congress, and JVC, and if not now, they should all go into the American Jewish Congress and, vote themselves into power, and challenge, the national bourgeoisie, Zionist control of the institutions and property, immense properties as well, and schools and all that sort of thing, And here in Canada, we have to get a plenary session of the Canadian Jewish Congress again, to overrule the dictatorship that has been imposed upon us.
Or at least if we can't overrule it, at least create the space for debate. Because right now, I'm telling you, right now, no debate is allowed. At least unless you demonstrate, blockade, take over something, disrupt. That's the only time your voice is going to be heard.
Yeah.
And within the halls of power, within these organizations you're talking about, opposition voices are not allowed.
Yeah. But I've managed to excavate a sort of a passageway into legal, dissent internally in the Jewish community now with my picket line tomorrow. So even if I'm just one, it doesn't matter. It just has the same effect. But I've invited Neturei Karta in to come and demonstrate together with me. But Neturei Karta is into doing, solidarity. So that once they come out, for one Palestinian demonstration, they don't do, like another demonstration the same weekend. So I don't expect them to be there. But they should. Okay. They should come and speak directly to the Jewish community because they are an authentic voice of Judaism and they bring back, the true heritage. I should make leaflets with the sayings of Samuel the prophet, because he was anti-state, he was anti-king, even though he chose Saul to be the king, and they all harken back to the kingdoms of Israel as if this is a justification for what they're doing and for an exclusivity over the territory. But in Judaism there is no such exclusivity, and there is no kingdom either. That was something that was established in opposition to the Judaism in effect, because Samuel said there should be no king, and that's all written down there. So I'm going to print it up in both English, French, and Hebrew, and hand it out to the people so that they can get themselves educated, and know what it is all about. Because this, nonsense, it comes from Protestantism. It's not Judaism. Protestantism says that the place for the Jews is to go back to Palestine to prepare the stage, for the return of the Messiah, which they call Jesus Christ. So, that's what the role of the Jewish people is. Like Jewish people elsewhere, are not, they're not, accepted. And in fact, those, they consider Zionists to be converts to Christianity, to Protestant Christianity. So that's why they get along so well. So those who refuse to go to Israel are those who refuse to be converted to Protestantism, and therefore they will be eliminated. That's the part that's eliminated by the days of awe. Yeah, I think that's what they call it. And this is what they have planned, for anti-Zionist Jewish people. It's very it's a question, it's an existential question is here for the American Jewish community. Do they want to stay in the United States, or, are they waiting, to be pushed, into Israel by their own allies, supposedly? This is the question that Zionists have to consider. And the answer is, that they cannot be Zionists and be Jewish. One is not compatible with the other. And they're going to learn this.
Well, I'm glad we're talking about this, because I've been very concerned with the censorship, with the lack of debate, the banning of, or the attempt to ban the Palestinian flag in some countries. Just the entire way that this is the making being pro-Palestinian, being for the resistance means you're anti-Semitic. No.
No.
That has to be fought for outside and inside the Jewish community.
Even the attacks that have taken place against the Jewish community here in Montreal, there was a school that was shot at twice, and another synagogue that had a Molotov cocktail thrown out of it. Okay, but if they took down the Israel flag in front of the place, I don't think that they would get attacked. Like they're putting up, the Israel flag. So it's a question of, of Zionism. It's not a question of anti-Semitism.
Yeah,
we got to get rid of the flag.
Yeah, the flag has become a real polarizing symbol of violent oppression of an unarmed people.
Yeah.
Because like it or not, and we might not like it, the Palestinian resistance is not able to, does not desire to, nor is it able to go toe-to-toe with Israel. Israel is not fighting a war against another country with the army. A real army, not, I'm just saying the Palestinian resistance is doing the best it can with what it has.
Yeah.
Israel is not seeking to fight a war. They're seeking to kill civilians and destroy infrastructure. That needs to be something we talk about. Kill civilians and to build a movement internationally that will justify and support that. Their goal is to have a movement internationally in Europe, in the United States, in South America, in Asia, in the Caribbean, in Oceania, that supports them. And we got to keep that in mind also. Where you have people, I'm going to use some terms that aren't too kind. We have people that aren't too educated about the world, who only know their village or their community. They don't really get a chance to read much about what's really going on outside society. They'll be more inclined to support Israel. Why? It's based on God. It's based on religion. Okay? So we have to really know that Israel has and the United States has a plan to spread that it is right around the world. Anybody who opposes it anywhere in the world is an anti-Semite or is supporting terrorism. We have to keep that when we build out. That's why our protests are so important. I still say the protest is what has kept some of this Israel stuff in check. And I'm not saying it's in check at all, but some of the more visual abuses, Israel's had to cut back a little bit. They can't be seen bombing. No, they can't bomb on hospitals. They can't have it filmed. Okay, they can't. So we have to remember that they have an international program.
Okay. Very encouraging. Thank you, Steve. And tomorrow I'll be on the picket line there, and then I'll make a body cam video of that as well. I'll put on my YouTube channel.
Do that.
Very good. Okay. So here we go. Now, I think that we are having an effect, that the movement is an international movement so strong that it's been fed by ideas, our ideas, which originated with us.
Yes.
And, this is now having an effect, and so we continue.
Yes.
Next up, we have an Al Jazeera video, which came out on December 2nd, 2023.
This week, a special edition of the Listening Post. We're looking at Europe, digging into the discourse there, the coverage of Israel's war on Gaza. Beginning in Germany, Israel's most dependable ally in the EU, where shows of support for Palestinians have been suppressed, demonized. France, where much of the coverage is toxic, and where the debate on Gaza has been weaponized against minorities. Plus, the outlier that is Ireland, where there has been probing criticism of Israel's actions from politicians.
When does Palestine get the right to defend itself?
And in the media. If the United States has aided, abetted, and helped finance Israel's campaign of ethnic cleansing in Gaza, the European Union has been complicit as well. Like their allies in Washington, EU officials have provided their support for Israel's war, refusing to condemn it the way they have Hamas's attacks or call for a ceasefire. And while there is significant empathy for Israel among Europeans, there is also growing public opposition to this war, along with demands that their governments do more to stop it. Across the EU, there are different shades in the news coverage, depending on which country you're in. In this special episode, we will examine the discourse around the conflict in 3 countries. We'll look at France, where some television news channels have distorted the debate to suit their own agendas, and Ireland, where support for the Palestinians is more widespread and far more tolerated. But our starting point is Germany. It's the EU's largest economy, a country where historical guilt over the Holocaust has created one of the most pro-Israel media climates around, and where dissenting voices are routinely censored or intimidated into silence.
In diesem Moment gibt es für Deutschland nur einen Platz, den Platz an der Seite Israels.
Germany's relationship with Israel is unlike that of any other country. It's a relationship that goes beyond loyalty and support. Ensuring Israel's security and existence is part of what Germans call Staatsräson, the country's raison d'être.
Israels Sicherheit ist deutsche Staatsräson, war nie eine Lehrformel. Und darf auch keine werden.
Germany's past, the genocide of almost 6 million European Jews during the Holocaust, informs every aspect of the country's public and political discourse around Israel. For many Germans, Israel is above reproach.
Und deshalb sind die Vorwürfe, die gegen Israel da erhoben werden, absurd.
The outright support for Israel in Germany constitutes a sort of a comforting thought that, okay, the people that we as Germans oppressed and killed and treated so badly historically now have their kind of own state and everything is fine. It's not so much that Israel is supported in Germany because we come to terms with its past, but it's a shortcut for not really coming to terms with our past.
When Germany categorized Israel's national security as their reason of state, they essentially wanted to solve their problem of being described as the original anti-Semites of the world. They want to put the past behind them. So Germany, instead of listening to their actual Jewish citizens, instead of fighting anti-Semitism in a way that protects all Jewish people, what it has done instead is take a vehemently and staunch pro-Israel stance where they essentially can do no wrong.
In this atmosphere of unwavering political support for Israel, German media outlets have also shown pro-Israel bias in their reporting. This is reflected in the one-sidedness of talk show debates.
Die Hamas-Terroristen haben es ganz bewusst darauf angelegt, unschuldige Zivilistinnen und Zivilisten brutalstmöglich zu ermorden. Ich habe nicht den Eindruck, dass Israel es bewusst darauf anlegt, Zivilistinnen und Zivilisten zu töten.
For Bild, the biggest newspaper in Germany, Hamas freed Israeli hostages, while Israel freed Palestinian terrorists. And mainstream outlets, from ARD, the public broadcaster, to media conglomerate Axel Springer, have issued strict guidance to their journalists on this story.
ARD sent an internal memo to its journalists, where in it states that if any civilian deaths take place, it has to be stated as these civilians are being used as human shields. And this was provocated by Hamas.
Es kann natürlich auch daran liegen, dass die Hamas darauf setzt, dass viel Zivilbevölkerung im Norden des Gazastreifens verbleibt und dann sozusagen als menschliches Schutzschild wirkt.
And if that's the only image that Germans see, then the public are not going to understand the actual scale of this war and just how much violence has been inflicted on an innocent civilian population.
Axel Springer has support for Israel written into its work contract. So if you work as a journalist for one of their outlets, say Bild Zeitung, which is the biggest newspaper in the German media landscape, or Die Welt, you are kind of committed already from the get-go, regardless of what your personal views might be, to report in a pro-Israeli way. What that often translates to is literally outright support of Israel government policies.
The Bild newspaper is the most widely read newspaper in Germany. And its journalistic standards, if one can call them that, are pretty unspeakable. Then you have Die Welt, which is slightly more highbrow, but ideologically it's cut from the same cloth. And then you also have Der Spiegel, which recently ran an article about Greta Thunberg. You can only call it a hit piece, really. Just this absurd personal attack on her because she has recently been quite vocal about her support for Palestine.
We tried to speak to ARD and Axel Springer, but neither outlets granted us an interview or a statement. And those in Germany who go against the grain on this story risk being blacklisted or sidelined. Journalists challenging the prevailing narrative in newsrooms have been fired. Exhibitions, workshops and conferences in the cultural sphere have been cancelled or delayed. Peaceful protests have been either banned, criminalized or violently repressed. Now, Germany has one of Europe's largest Palestinian diasporas, but it's also become one of the most censored places for anyone who expresses solidarity with Palestinians or anyone who speaks out against Israel's war crimes in Gaza.
There's an increasing climate of censorship in Germany in the last 5 to 6 weeks, a climate of kind of Botox McCarthyism. It's really quite intense. Kufirs have been forbidden in schools, like symbols of the Palestinian flag, symbols of Palestinian identity have been forbidden. Anything that can basically be interpretable as anti-Semitic, and that's a very sort of like wide range of things in the German society, has been kind of damned.
Gewalt und Hass auf den Straßen. Islamisten fordern das Kalifat und sind sich mit Rechts- und Linksextremisten nur in einem einig: Israel und die Juden sind an allem schuld.
I don't believe Germany has come to terms with its past, because what they're doing is stifling conversation, stifling any progress or any sort of critical discourse. And now, because the spotlight has been shone on Germany and German discourse, more and more people are realizing that this is not fighting anti-Semitism. This is attacking Palestinians.
Essentially, Palestinian existence is offensive to many in Germany. That's the simplest way to put it, really, because Palestinians interfere with this utopian narrative that the Holocaust was at least slightly balanced out by the foundation of Israel. In terms of the moral and cultural identity that Germany promotes of itself, it's hard for Palestinians to find a place which doesn't just involve demonization or erasure.
Germany is the EU state where debate on the war in Gaza is most heavily censored. France may be the country where the discourse is at its most intense and volatile. France is home to both Europe's largest community of Jews and its biggest Muslim population, so its citizens are more invested in this conflict than most, especially since it has been fanning the flames of both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia there. The Macron government has been strident about which side it's on, supporting bans placed on pro-Palestine demonstrations by local authorities, and much of the media have effectively taken the same view. News outlets owned by conservative billionaires have been peddling Israeli talking points and weaponizing this war to go after some familiar targets: immigrants, Islam, and the political left. The Listening Post's Meenakshi Ravi now on some of the factors that feed into the intensity around France's debate on the Israel-Gaza war.
October 10th, 3 days after Hamas's attack on Israel, and France's most watched news channel, BFM TV, is reporting an incendiary claim that among Hamas's victims were 40 infants.
Ils ont dénombré pas moins de 40 enfants qui ont été exécutés, éventrés. Parmi eux, des bébés.
The reporter making that claim, a claim which was soon disproven, was not one of BFM's own. He worked for I24 News, an Israeli pro-Netanyahu channel that has the same owner as BFM, the French-Israeli billionaire Patrick Drahi. It was I24 News that first reported the dead babies' claim.
Babies. Their heads cut off. That's what they said.
Throughout this war, BFM has relied on I24 News for much of its coverage, and it shows.
BFM TV has acted as a message relay medium for the Israeli military. A lot of space was given to a representative of the army, and that gave him a platform to spread propaganda.
L'hôpital Al-Shifa à Gaza est effectivement l'épicentre, le centre névralgique de l'activité du Hamas.
The fact that there is a through line from a propaganda channel like I24 News to a French news channel which is required to cover the news impartially is an ethical problem. I don't even dare to imagine the reaction in France if we had a 24-hour outlet that broadcast content from a Russian channel. There's impunity when it comes to Israel.
Senior editorial staff at BFM have themselves taken issue with the channel's coverage, complaining to management about a lack of balance. Among their misgivings, the repeated interviews with a certain Julien Bahloul.
Julien Bahloul, vous êtes spécialiste de la société israélienne.
Described to viewers as a French-Israeli living in Tel Aviv or a specialist in Israeli society, Bahloul is in fact a former spokesperson for the Israeli military, as well as a former journalist for I-24 News. BFM did not respond to our request for comment. However, some of those disgruntled journalists at the channel say its reporting has begun to improve. Coverage of the war by France's publicly funded news outlets and some of its newspapers has been more even-handed. But that still leaves plenty of others in an increasingly right-wing media landscape pushing some dubious, divisive narratives.
I've often had the impression that the French media were telling us a story of civilization against barbarism.
Rien n'est plus monstrueux que de vouloir expliquer la barbarie.
Several commentators have told us we absolutely cannot compare a child killed by Hamas on October 7th and a baby killed by Israeli bombings in Gaza.
On ne peut pas comparer le fait d'avoir tué des enfants délibérément en attaquant, comme le fait le Hamas, et le fait de tuer des enfants involontairement en se défendant, comme le fait Israël.
La manière dont ils ont été tués, elle est différente et elle part de notre inhumanité ou de notre humanité.
What has greatly affected the media coverage is that there are very, very few Palestinian voices on TV panels. In most cases, there are none. We are invisible in the French media landscape, and so there are no voices to provide a counter-narrative, to correct lies, to correct an analysis that has dehumanized the Palestinian cause. Instead, for 2 or 3 weeks, we found ourselves in an endless debate about who considers Hamas as a terrorist group, who does not, who condemns it, who does not, without ever going into the real issues in any depth.
Since 2015 in France, we have been very sensitive to the risk of Islamist attacks. And what we saw on October 7th reminded us of the attacks we've had in France. So, it was the nature of October 7th that led to it being interpreted in that way. Even so, all opinions are represented in the French media as they are in most Western media and as I would hope at Al Jazeera as well.
The discourse in France over the war in Gaza is unique because of 2 factors, one historical, the other demographic. There was France's role in the World War II Holocaust, when the government installed by the Nazi occupation helped deport an estimated 75,000 Jews to the death camps. And modern-day France is home to Europe's largest populations of both Jews and Muslims. That demands a delicate approach on the part of the Macron government, which, for the most part, has been missing. Macron's Interior Minister, Gérald Darmanin, set the tone, quickly imposing a nationwide ban specifically on pro-Palestine protests, citing a risk of, quote, public order disturbances. France's top court later watered down that policy, which demonstrators had ignored anyway, risking arrest in their thousands. Darmanin's lopsided approach towards bigoted attacks has also riled people. Since early in the war, he has toured French TV studios, sharing government figures on the surge in anti-Semitic incidents. It took weeks of pressure from Muslim community leaders before Darmanin published the stats for Islamophobia, which has also spiked. Multiple right-wing voices in the media have been using the rise in anti-Semitism to delegitimize pro-Palestine protesters and to demonize Muslims.
Il faut le dire, pardon de l'exprimer de façon peut-être un peu brutale, il y a un antisémitisme couscous.
During the war, the issue of Islamophobia has somewhat disappeared from the coverage. What's more, there are Islamophobic media outlets in France. The most scandalous is CNews, owned by the billionaire Vincent Bolloré, who is a Catholic fundamentalist. He has become extremely powerful, and his news outlets spread Islamophobia.
Répandent l'islamophobie.
Sur CNews.
On CNews, Hosts like Pascal Prod or Sonia Mabrouk always emphasize that Muslims can't integrate, that they can't understand the values of the French Republic.
La haine du juif, la haine de l'Occident, et donc la haine de la France. C'est la guerre des civilisations, vraiment.
These media personalities read the Israel-Palestine conflict as the expression of an incompatibility between democracy and the Arab-Muslim world.
The coverage by these far-right news outlets has argued that if we are pro-Palestinian, we are necessarily anti-Semitic, and drawing links with theories about terrorism and Islamism. But we must not forget that many people from immigrant backgrounds in Europe come from the history of decolonization. We are facing one of the last colonial conflicts in the world, and so it's normal that people who come from these anti-colonial struggles rally around the Palestinian cause.
There is one country in Europe that hasn't lined up behind Israel, the closest thing the EU has to an outlier, Ireland. Its government has used words like disproportionate to describe Israel's bombing of Gaza, terms like collective punishment, and opposition politicians there have taken it further. Way back in 1980, Ireland became the first EU government to call for Palestinian statehood. There is an affinity with Palestinians that is rooted in a shared history of colonialism, occupation, and division under British rule. Ireland's political consensus on Palestine is, for the most part, reflected in its media. News outlets have provided the kind of journalism that, while hardly radical, cannot be found almost anywhere else in Europe, giving space to both Israelis and Palestinians. The Listening Post's Tarek Nafa now on how the war on Gaza is playing out across Irish politics and media.
It's genocide, openly declared and carried out by the apartheid state of Israel.
The Irish position is somewhat of an outlier amongst European nations. Ireland has been quite vocal about calling for an end to what's going on the ground.
Would you accept the accusation by the Irish government that that seems to have been really driven by revenge?
There is a lot of criticism from Irish politicians of the Israeli offensive in Gaza and the overall position of the Israelis when it comes to the West Bank. So the media tends to reflect that.
The debate around Palestine in Ireland is unlike almost anywhere else in Europe. You can hear it in the language used by Prime Minister Leo Varadkar.
But I've huge sympathy for the Palestinian people. They've been horribly treated now for 75 years and denied.
It's evident in the positions held across the political spectrum.
When does Palestine get the right to defend itself?
In the voices you hear on the streets, and it's echoed in the Irish media, their approach to the story, and the questions they're asking.
If you are killing people who are of a particular nationality or of a particular ethnicity, that is the very legal definition of genocide.
Absolutely not.
It is.
We are not.
The coverage of Israel and the mechanizations of the Israeli government have been quite impartial. I've written opinion pieces that have called for a ceasefire straight away and for the carnage to stop. That's controversial in other jurisdictions, but I feel like this is a normal, logical thing to call for.
I wouldn't necessarily say anything's radical about it. The position is Irish people have compassion for what is happening in Gaza when they see dead children, dead doctors, dead nurses, dead civilians. There's no position in Ireland that is critical of Israel's right to defend itself or Israel's right to exist or anything like that. There is the same amount of compassion for those who are the victims of Hamas's savage attack. It's just that I think the feeling in Ireland is that the innocent civilians in Gaza shouldn't pay the price for what Hamas has done.
Ireland's affinity with Palestine is shaped by the country's colonial past and a shared history of resistance to British rule. Ireland was Britain's oldest colony. The tools of control Britain used there, suppression, violence and division, informed British colonial rule elsewhere in the world, including in Palestine. And then there is Ireland's more recent history, the civil conflict in Northern Ireland known as the Troubles, and the difficult sacrifices Ireland has made in the pursuit of peace, which some suggest offers a template to Palestinians and Israelis.
Miracles are hard to believe in, but it's worth remembering
that we are currently living our own miracle on this island. And for all those in Israel and Palestine tonight, it mightn't seem like it, but there's always hope. And we hope that your miracle comes soon.
Ireland has fought British colonialism, has experienced imperialism. We have our legacy of experiencing ethnic cleansing, forcible transfer, genocide through hunger and starvation. So Ireland has a natural affiliation when it comes to standing in solidarity with other colonised people. Of course, there are those on the island of Ireland who would find affinity with the Israeli state, but in many ways it is the stance of the Irish people is in standing strong in favour of Palestine and Palestinian liberation.
Beyond the shared history of oppression, what explains the Irish position is a grasp of reality. I think our military neutrality has a lot to do with that. When you see a piece of land and its people being bombarded by an extraordinarily well-resourced military, the call for peace is a pretty obvious one.
Our foreign policy has been very consistent for decades, and not just on the issue of the two-state solution for Palestine, but our adherence to multilateralism. Ireland has had its own peace process, and to do that we had to get our diaspora on board. We had to have international friends to help us along the way. And I think the feeling in Ireland is the Palestinians don't have any friends.
The Irish are seen as advocates for Palestinian rights in a continent that has mostly stood shoulder to shoulder with Israel. However, Ireland's Conservative government has faced criticism from the opposition for not going far enough.
That the recitation of all of our interventions and charitable acts for the Palestinian people do not relieve you as a government of your primary responsibility to hold Israel accountable to the world for its acts.
The government has been vocal, but its actions have been limited. It has not recalled its ambassador to Israel or cut diplomatic ties like a number of countries across the global south. Ireland may stand out in Europe, but the discourse in its politics and its media shows that its stance is hardly radical.
The discourse and the language that is used at a European level is echoed by the Irish government, and that in and of itself will find itself into the mainstream media. So we are viewed in Europe as being somewhat of an outlier, but that's still a relatively conservative position. We may say one or two words differently to our European counterparts, but that isn't a huge difference.
Ireland was very much behind, the language around condemning Hamas, releasing the hostages, Israel's right to defend itself, but wanted to ensure that amongst all of that was the Palestinian civilians, that they would have their rights observed under international humanitarian law. It can use its small voice to ensure that the Palestinians are not forgotten, the civilians in Palestine, in Gaza, are not forgotten.
You've been watching a special edition of The Listening Post on the news coverage, the discourse surrounding Israel's unprecedented assault on the Gaza Strip, a story which has exposed deep divisions within European societies and differences between EU states. Watch this space for where this story goes next.
And let's go to another Here and Now from Dr. Weisfeld's channel. The description reads, "The developing regional war against the genocidal regime of the Zionist state. Gaza war continues to resist occupation."
Here and now, here we are. And the time here and now is the time of war. We're in an escalating war, not a war winding down, as would seem by this truce. There was a massacre yesterday of, 500 to 1,000 people, in a residential area. And the Defense Minister Gallant has announced as well that they intend to continue the fighting into the south. So they want to do an ethnic cleansing, a genocide, whatever, And it's like as if they're, you know, making this a model of how they're going to treat the whole, you know, the peoples in the South, you know, like they're subject to genocide, you know, if they don't, you know, play the game.
Well, this most recent act of barbarism, to me, it's kind of, to me, Israel has crossed a line now.
Yeah.
Because you were asked to extend the truce. You won't extend the truce. You won't have a ceasefire. No, you won't have it. You just want to kill people. Huh. No, that's all you want to do, is destroy and kill people. So it seems to me, if nobody's going to declare war on Israel, it's not going to stop. Somebody has to declare war. And that's how I see it right now, because they're not stopping.
Hmm.
They're not stopping.
Yeah.
They stopped, got some prisoners released, and they go on killing.
Yeah.
So if nobody declares war, they'll keep it up. That's all that will stop them. They declare war on them and begin to hit Israeli targets in Israel. Some governments got it. If nobody does it, it will not stop. I'm not saying I'm advocating that, but that's how I see it right now. Yeah. Or it has protests around the world at Israeli consulates, embassies. Got to go in, take them over, and just something. We got to do something very systematic, not drastic, but something systematic and attention getting, because they're just going to keep killing people.
Yeah.
They've shown this right here. Given the chance to have a peace, they want to kill. And that's a sign of a psychopath, a mass murderer. You know, that's to me, there's a certain psychosis going on here. Yeah. They don't have to do this. No, they don't have to do this. They don't have to kill people. No, they don't. They don't have to bomb nobody. And to me, in the United States especially, Biden and Blinken must be called on the carpet right now, today. Next week, I mean, you had a peace agreement. You know the U.S. has something. You know the U.S. State Department and the U.S. government has something to do that peace with that truce. We know that. It wouldn't have gone down if the U.S. government didn't demand of Israel. The U.S. government demanded of Israel, and they got it. But now, is U.S. government going to say we want more civilian killed? Especially when Blinken is on the record saying he wants fewer civilian killed. What's happening here? I think there's some political questions that have to be asked right now, today. What's happening here? Why is this going on? And what is the government's stance on this? If this isn't responded to politically, this particular bombing right here, you just came off of a truce, of what they call a pause. So you pause and really kill more people. I don't know. It seems to me that they have crossed the red line. And if no government is going to declare war on them and begin attacking Israel with bombs and drones and missiles, I don't know. They need to. I think they've earned a war. They've earned they've earned the right to be considered someone's enemy and to send missiles in Israel to stop them. Unless something else is going to happen. I'm not advocating that, but I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. I'm being supplied with $14 billion worth of bombs. What's happening here, I think, is two wars. One, there's a political war with Hamas. Okay, so they're fighting Hamas. Hamas has 27,000, fighters, and they're taking on, 937 tanks, and then the armored vehicles, and then the helicopters, and then the airplanes. And then the other part of the war that's being waged is being waged on the Palestinian people by the Air Force, which is not hitting Hamas targets. It's just hitting, Palestinian people. There's two wars happening. There's two layers to the war here. One underground, one on the surface. Surface war is against the Palestinian people. The underground war is the Hamas and the Islamic Jihad and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. All the militias are fighting against the occupation. And they're doing quite well because they've developed, a missile, a hand-launched, missile, which is able to penetrate the armor of the vehicles that they have, the Merkava tanks, in the latest version of them as well. So, the comment that I heard on a video that I'm currently watching, is that this is actually, like a war on the third world peoples. And this is, a model for how they will be treated. This is, like a turning point. This is, a turning point to fascism or socialism. This is, worldwide, event. This is it's developing not only into a regional war, but it's developing into a world war, with the alignments, that are coming together, and which is going to engender a world revolution at the same time. This is, something that we have to be ready to cope with. And I'm ready. I'm going back tomorrow to the Jewish Community Campus, building, where I was first arrested for having written "And a Free Palestine."
Right.
And I've got my painted sign here that I painted myself, that I'm going to, if you can see, it says, where's the focal point? It says, oh yeah, here. One Holocaust does not justify another. Okay, so this addresses, the psychology of the Jewish community itself, which is, stoked into a state of trauma, in which the government is trying to say, that the Hamas attack was equivalent, to the Nazi Holocaust on the Jewish people. And so people, start to remember, all sorts of things, happened to, their family during the Holocaust, and they think that they're, obliged, to carry out an extermination campaign against Palestinian people because all the Palestinians are Nazis now. This is the mentality that they've been brought to. But the Israelis themselves, and even the military, are backing off of this, psychosis that you mentioned. And there will be rebellions, within the military as well, which will refuse to serve in Gaza. And I'm going to be going back, to the Jewish community campus, every day during the afternoon, to do the picket line. Even though up to now I'm still alone, but I'm appealing, to some of the other, older members, of the Jewish opposition here. Don't know the young people, don't know the student, Jewish groups or anything like that. And then the Marxists, like Jewish, comrades, they don't want to get involved with the Jewish Bundes like me. So, I have to go to the extreme, of declaring a hunger strike tomorrow as well, until there's a ceasefire and negotiations. So this is the maximum that I can do right now, and this is what I'm going to do tomorrow.
Okay. Who is going to be keeping up with this as far as the media or your social media posts?
Yeah, I got the 5,000 on Facebook, that I can broadcast to. I'm back on live Facebook. I got back my video broadcasting right.
Good.
That I was banned for during a month, and then but I prefer to record now. I've sort of broken off of doing Facebook Live, that I was enchanted with before. So I record live, on the new phone that I have, and then I can upload it, to both Facebook and YouTube, so that it's preserved. Because who knows what's going to happen to Facebook.
Yeah, well, I get you. Time will tell what happens to Facebook, and
YouTube, yeah, as well. I've had trouble with YouTube as well. This is at least we have some of our own media platforms.
Well, that's one. I was telling someone a few weeks ago, and this should not be construed as my support for the fascist right wing and the racist movement in this country. But they don't use Facebook. They don't use YouTube as their sole way. They use many different platforms, Rumble, BitChute, and they have their own social media platforms. If we have your own social platform, you can put anything you want on your platform to let people know it exists. YouTube had nothing to do with it. The right wing in this country has their own semi-internet. You would log right into their internet to watch their programming, and nobody thought. Now it costs money to do that. You know, they want people to donate, but I think you're on the right path. I think so. So I mean, I want to get back to what happened. It's this mass murder, and God, I want to talk about this a little bit because you know, is this supposed to scare the people from fighting?
No, this is supposed to scare the people into leaving the north because, you know, 3/4 of the Palestinians didn't leave the north. You know, because the poorest, you know, the Palestinians, you know, cannot leave. They have no way to leave. Even, you know, like, so the refugee camps are still there. So that's what they're bombing, the refugee camps, which are the most densely populated, of course. So, and these are the refugees, you know, from when? How did these refugees appear in Gaza? You know, like, you know, half the population are refugees, or 80% of the population are refugees. You know, where do these refugees come from? They come from the very towns and villages that were taken by Hamas on October the 7th. That's where those refugees came from. That was their town.
I see.
Ashkelon was their city, you know, and they got booted out of there into the Gaza Strip, you know, half of the Gaza Strip, you know, that was allocated by the partition plan. They ended up living in refugee camps, and now they're getting bombed again, you know.
That's no good.
Yeah.
That's no good. And I think we also need to look for any emerging splits. I think you mentioned that within the army, in Israel itself, and within the pro-Zionist community worldwide. Because this should shake some people up. If it doesn't, you'll really know what you're dealing with then.
Yeah.
I keep telling you, after a truce, to kill this many people, deliberately attacking civilians, and that doesn't shake you from supporting such mass murder.
Yeah.
I don't know. Last time we had our discussion, I don't know if we talked about some of the splits that occur within the State Department. Some people within the government quit and wrote public letters of resignation and disgust at Blinken and Biden. They were shaken to leave. They had to get out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, I support them having some principles. No, sometimes you have to say, no, I'm not going there with this. I got to go. You know. Anyway, that's how I see it.
I haven't seen any recent reports about refuseniks, they're called. You know, any military refusing to fight. You know, but I heard something, you know, about a lot of the troops, you know, who are refusing to fight in Gaza, and they're pulling out.
That's good.
But you know, nothing major so far, you know. So but this current government, you know, is going to go for, as the American expression says, it's going to go for broke. They're going to put everything into this, you know, because they've lost the popular support amongst the Israelis to get elected again. Not because they're fighting the war and losing, but because they were so outmaneuvered on October the 7th. You know, there's even a report now that even had a copy of the plan, the Hamas plan to attack in this fashion, on a multi-level fashion, you know, air, sea, and land, you know, since a year ago. And they didn't believe it because they didn't think that Hamas was capable of doing it. They didn't think that Hamas was that smart. They thought it was just wishful thinking on part of Hamas. So they outthought themselves, you know, the Zionists, you know, are so brainwashed that they've brainwashed themselves into believing their own lies.
Well, let me ask you something. Do you believe that? Here's my stance on that. Could this be propaganda created by Israel? Could this be some propaganda, a lie someone's spreading for some reason? It would be very hard for me to believe that Israel, having these plans, that nothing would be done even to investigate them. That doesn't sound right to me.
Oh, no, they didn't necessarily know. They had this 40-page report available, but it wasn't passed on to the war cabinet. It wasn't passed, and because the upper, administration in the intelligence, field there, they blocked it. This is only a report from a lowly woman, intelligence officer who made this report. And she's a woman as well, so how could she be believed?
So somebody who was a female in the spy community in Israel had a report, and her next level commanders would not pass it up.
That's right. Yeah. They didn't believe it. They wouldn't believe it. They refused to believe it.
Well, if that's the case, they should be fired immediately.
Oh, yeah, they will. I mean, all the Israelis are becoming aware of all of this. They're becoming aware of the fact, as well, that, their own, people, their own, soldiers and their own civilians, were, bombed, by the Israel military. This is coming out as well. In particular, this is why the ceasefire, broke down, because, Israel was demanding all the women, that should be released. So, Hamas said, okay, you can have, these 3 women soldiers who were killed by your own bombings. You can have their bodies. And Israel refused. How could they accept, their own soldiers that they bombed themselves, to be returned, as evidence to be used against themselves?
Then Hamas has a right to bury them somewhere or to burn them. Because at a certain point, that body is going to start decaying.
They don't have any fridges there anymore. They don't have any electricity.
Hamas is simply burn their bodies, not in hostility, no.
Yeah.
But in respect for them.
Not just in respect, but to preserve, the health of the community, because that's a source of infection. So,
right.
But if they do, then Israel will accuse them, of an atrocity, because they burned an Israeli body.
I understand, but at this point, if they were willing to take the bodies of their own soldiers,
yeah,
and the body, we assume they have not been embalmed, and maybe they have been embalmed. Okay, but we're assuming that they haven't been embalmed. They had them for about a month. They must be in pretty bad shape, unless there's a cultural way of preserving the bodies within that community that allowed them to even be able to be given up.
Well, they were more recently, killed, by the bombings, not since October the 7th.
Oh,
they were presumably taken hostage, live, on October the 7th, and then they get bombed, by their own military type thing.
I see. Okay. That
makes more sense for them to recover the bodies, but they don't want the bodies. They don't want the evidence of what they've done to their own, soldiers. So that's why there's, war again, basically.
Well, like I said, if no major power or powers is going to step in and declare war on Israel, then to me, all we can hope, in my view, and if the diplomatic back channels and front channels aren't working, apparently they're not working to stop this, then we have to keep demonstrating, and we have to support the resistance fighters, because that is the only hope.
Yes, but the mass demonstrations are not going to work. The mass demonstrations worked, to get a truce, but now, that's gone. That's shot. The mass demonstrations are not going to work. What I think is a strategic, action that Western activists, can achieve is by intervening inside the Jewish community. And I'm talking particularly, to the Jewish comrades. They have to get inside the Jewish community, like going to a Palestinian demonstration to show, your solidarity is fine, for morale, but it's not doing anything. You have to go inside the Jewish community so the Jewish community will disown the Israel government, denounce it to their family members in Israel, and wrench them out of the grasp of this Zionist ideology. We have to defeat Zionism, and it has to come from within the Jewish community. I'm talking about a Jewish revolution against Zionism. And that's what I'm going to go into, tomorrow at the Jewish Community Center camp.
Well, that is That is a viable, that is a very viable strategy. Because right now, I mean, I still support the mass demonstrations, but I think any other strategy of influence that can cause a split within those who support Israel is acceptable to me.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to the demonstration today because I can't exhaust myself. I have to get ready for tomorrow because I'm going to go back there every day now. Every afternoon, I'm going to be there, and not just once a week. And I'm going on a hunger strike too. This is I've done before, and I can do it again. And it has to demonstrate. I have to do that to demonstrate, to the Jewish community that this is serious, even though I'm alone there. Like this is, like has to be considered, with the utmost seriousness. And like my painting says, like one Holocaust does not justify another. And I think a majority of the Jewish community is going to agree, but they have to agree, and do something. They have to say something. They have to stop, the Israeli government, which is lost in any case, but they're going to destroy everybody to go down with them.
Well, we need to stop that at all, as quickly as possible.
Okay, I'll do it. All by myself. No, it's going to spark people into action. It's got to, like, otherwise, it's as if, you're facing the Holocaust of the Nazis. And, like the Zionists, took the point of view, that the Nazis, had won, that there was no way to stop fascism, that Europe was inherently fascist, and that they've always, oppressed the Jewish people, and they always will. There's no way to stop it from happening. Therefore, you join them and you offer, to form another branch, of the fascist international movement, and you set up another country, but under their control, under their national bourgeoisie, and only according to their exclusive interests. That's what Zionism, was the response, to Nazism. And now they're replicating that. And now they expect that other people is going to accept, the status quo as such. Again, they're going to say, oh, well, like, what can we do about it? We can't do anything, this sort of bullshit.
I think we can do something about it, but I do think that we have to, I think that what I said earlier, I'm not going to have any problem repeating it, that you had a chance to continue a truce or a peace or a pause, and you chose mass murder. So that shows what you stand for, and that's it. You don't get another chance to, you can't call that back.
Yeah.
No, but the major powers will not declare war on Israel. And that's, I'm not saying I expect them to, but they're not declaring war on Israel.
No. But Hezbollah and Lebanon is going to declare war on Israel.
Well, somebody has to declare war on Israel, not because I say so, but I was listening to this guy, Scott Ritter, which I don't know if you know who he is. He's this American guy, supposed to be so anti. He's a former U.S. Marine. He's developed some following in the U.S. and he was talking about how he went to Iraq with the UN to disarm Saddam Hussein. And he reminded me that Saddam Hussein had shot rockets into Israel in the past. Now, I didn't know that. I'm saying now no one's even willing to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, that was a government.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I like Saddam Hussein. I'm not saying, but I'm saying, no one now is even willing to do that. And that just says something to me about all the bluster of government. Or if you can't shoot rockets, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I mean,
they've got an opportunity to do something else, because, since that time, they've been occupied by the U.S. military. So they have U.S. military bases there. And
no.
Those military bases have been attacked 35 times.
Yeah.
So they've got, part of the apparatus, right there, in their backyard. So they can take care of that first.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Okay. I get your drift.
So I think that's going to happen as well. You know, that's going to be another front that's going to open up now.
Okay.
And Yemen, was respecting the ceasefire, the truce, was being respected by Yemen because Yemen had declared war on Israel, the Houthi government of Yemen. So now they've, like the ceasefire, this truce is over. So, the Yemen is, back in operation in war against Israel again. And they've got 4 Israeli, tankers, under their control.
They still have the tankers.
4 of them. Yeah, they got 4 tankers from Israel, owned by Israeli billionaires,
Okay.
Transporting oil, most likely.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, well, good. I mean, you're giving me some examples that there is hope.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, Iran, if Iran, sends missiles, into like military targets, of Israel, is it real? That's what I saw written one time, is it real, instead of Israel? If they do, send in missiles against military targets there and like airports, destroy some airstrips, so that the military jets cannot take off, that sort of stuff, then Israel will retaliate against Iran. They're going to target, everything that they can. They'll try to send, F-35 bombers there as well, but I don't think they would get the permission to go through the airspace of Saudi Arabia again, like they had before. Then that would drag in Saudi Arabia to shoot down, Israel planes that are going over its airspace. Wow, yeah, this can really blow up. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the time has come.
Yeah, to settle.
I think enough has been done after yesterday or today's attack to show the close of the barbarian.
Yeah.
Israel is a barbarian state.
Yeah. Yeah.
You had a chance for peace. You got some prisoners. You said, no, it's time to start killing them again. No.
Yeah.
It's not cool.
That's right.
No,
to start a war, to start a war when it already stopped, like that requires, like some weird, kind of, motivation. It's a genocidal motivation that's involved.
Yes.
Netanyahu even referred to the Amalekites as if the Palestinians in Gaza were Amalekites. Amalekites was a tribe of, in biblical history, that was totally eradicated, supposedly. Okay. Now, if it's totally eradicated, how could you call up their presence again, since they don't exist anymore? And yet, Netanyahu calls up their presence, says the Amalekites are the Palestinians, and that it's the time to eradicate them. This is, like too much. This is, like
sure
time.
It sure is.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll do some videos, from In Place tomorrow.
Thank you.
I'll broadcast them on Facebook and YouTube, and then when possible, perhaps I can get this system, to work on my mobile phone, and then we can do some updates, in the coming period, because we have to stay on top of this for sure.
I agree. Okay.
Very good. Okay, great. Thank you, Steve.
All right. Bye.
Oh.
With everything that's been going on, it is important to understand that the slogan, which I do credit to Dr. Weisfeld, I mean, many other people said it, but I credit him, and it's not about crediting individuals, it's about credit, because there is so much more open Jewish opposition to Zionism, but in the 2010s, while it was growing and growing at a rapid pace, it was still very well hidden. Now it's harder to hide it. Which minority, which marginalized group in the West is never allowed to represent itself? The answer is Jewish people. While the representation for marginalized groups in the West may be a bit pathetic, there is zero representation Jewish people are allowed to give themselves in the West. And that is because Zionist powers block Jewish people from speaking for themselves. We are not allowed to speak for ourselves. And the reason why we are not allowed to speak for ourselves is because it just so happens that the state of Israel is our arch enemy. The younger people are waking up and they were returning to the position of their great-grandparents. But to do that, that means to denounce the fascism of their parents and sometimes in some cases grandparents, because the grandparents' generation in this way has prevailed and it has reemerged in the spirit of Jewish youth. There can be no denial that what is happening is a Holocaust. So there's a channel called Roundtable. It's an affiliate of TRT World. And there is a video which kind of makes it kind of obvious that this is a genocide. Just watch this conversation alone and it should convince you. This is where we're going to end this video. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Please look at the description. If you look at the description below, there are 4 links that bring you to the 4-part Antichrist Crusade series. It is important to watch these 4 videos. Anti-Crusade Part 1 of 1. Sorry, Anti-Crusade, these are their names. Anti-Crusade Part 1 of 4, Anti-Crusade Part 2 of 4, Anti-Crusade Part 3 of 4, and Anti-Crusade Part 4 of 4. Each video is kind of an improvement over the next. These videos were not exactly magnifico or anything. They were actually kind of amateurish, but there was a lot more work and development that went into them. I had to get the help of an editor. I also had to get the help of an editor for this video too, because I don't know how to I'm not very good at taking videos from my phone and putting them on, you know, a YouTube mixer video thing. But I am figuring it out. I am learning more on how to do that. Remember, this Roundtable video came out on November 30th, 2023. And let us say openly that not only what is being done to Gaza is a Holocaust, this is a genocide. This is not only a Holocaust, this is a genocide. The Palestinian genocide, or the Palestinian Holocaust, is reminiscent of that of the Jewish Holocaust. And for those of us, Jewry, who know that this is wrong, we say not in our name. We say one Holocaust does not justify another, and never again for anyone.
Atrocities are being committed in Gaza. Innocent civilians are being killed. Mass displacement is taking place. So are Israel's actions meeting the definition of a genocide? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. The scenes in Gaza are horrifying. There are calls to end crimes against humanity and even to stop an ongoing genocide. Today, we're asking the big question: is Israel committing genocide?
Signs, banners, placards, even strong language.
Now is the moment for the world to take action against the genocide of Palestinians.
Even within the legal profession, genocide is often described as the crime of all crimes. It may seem like semantics, but war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and genocide are different with unique definitions. Genocide from a legal standpoint comes from the United Nations Convention and is committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group through killing, bodily harm, physical destruction, and inhibiting progeny. Thousands of Gazans have been killed since the fighting started on October 7th. But is their intent a real desire to wipe out those Palestinians, or are they, as Israel says, unfortunate collateral damage? Over 800 scholars believe there is intent. They wrote an open letter to sound the alarm about the possibility of the crime of genocide being perpetrated by Israeli forces, saying, "We do not do so lightly, recognizing the weight of this crime, but the gravity of the situation demands it." Other experts do not believe Israel's actions meet the legal threshold, which is incredibly high. The first conviction for the crime was Jean Kambanda, who pleaded guilty over his role in the Rwanda genocide. There have been subsequent convictions of Khmer Rouge members in Cambodia. And while prosecutors found that the Srebrenica massacre did meet the definition of genocide, the International Criminal Court that the wider violence in Bosnia and Herzegovina did not. The UN Convention was created in the aftermath of the Holocaust to safeguard future generations and say, never again. So will Israel learn the right or the wrong lessons of the past?
Well, earlier I spoke to the Irish politician Richard Boyd Barrett on this very issue, and this is what he thinks.
I think it, without a shadow of a doubt, it is a genocide, because to target an entire population based on their nationality or based on their ethnic background, which is what has been done in Gaza, but actually beforehand, as many human rights organizations, as well as people like myself and the Palestinians, obviously, have pointed out, this has always been about the targeting of the entire Palestinian population to ethnically cleanse them, to destroy them as a nation. And that's what we are seeing. And if you look at the statements of Israeli politicians, of Israeli military commanders, it is absolutely clear they have targeted the entire population. This suggestion they're going after Hamas is nonsense. What they are actually doing is terrorizing the whole population in order to kill tens of thousands and terrorize the rest of people to leave Gaza. And of course, they're doing it on the West Bank as well, where Hamas are not in power. We've seen this year the most deadly year for Palestinians on the West Bank, 700,000 illegal settlements, constant push to ethnically cleanse Palestinian people. So this is a regime that is built on war crimes and that it is clearly targeting the entire population to kill them, to terrorize them. And that is, all of these things are crimes against humanity, war crimes, and they fit the definition of genocide in the Rome Statutes. And indeed, in Ireland, we are pushing, and in the Parliament over the coming weeks, we've pushed forward motions to say that the Irish government should refer Israel to the International Criminal Court for genocide, for war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Well, let's meet our guests. Lara Elborno is an international lawyer and human rights activist. She focuses on human rights and asylum cases. Lara has family in Gaza, currently living under bombardment. She joins us from Paris. In Ontario, in Canada, we have Ardie Imses, an assistant professor of international law at Queen's University. He's a former official of the UN Relief and Works Agency and was based in Gaza City for 4 years. Also in Ontario is Michael Lynk, a professor emeritus at the Faculty of Law at Western University. He's a former UN Special Rapporteur on human rights in the Palestinian territories. And Joanna Frive is a lawyer who specialises in international criminal law. Joanna has advised the Office of the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, and she joins us now from Dublin. I'll come to you first, Joanna, actually. It's the crime of crimes, genocide. That is the phrase that has been used for it. Is this a genocide, what we're seeing in Gaza over the last few weeks?
Absolutely, and to be honest, there are a number of incidents of concern, and we've heard a lot over and over and again, violations of international humanitarian law. Now, what takes violations of international humanitarian law into the area of genocide is the intent. So the intent required for genocide is an intent to destroy in whole or in part a population. Now, out of all of the incidents that we've seen, in some instances you hear that they are potentially legitimate explanation. They say, oh, Hamas was there, Hamas did that. But for me, the one thing that is clear is the siege. So the withdrawal of water and electricity, when you know that the withdrawal of electricity clearly means that the desalination processes are not working anymore, and you're ultimately cutting off water in a long-term sustained way to civilian population, with the understanding that this will cause drastic destruction of the population. So from my perspective, when you look at the language, when you look at the type of ammunition that has been used, the strategy in the attack, you can say that there is indicia of that intent to destroy.
Lara, I'll come to you. What's your take on this? Is this a genocide?
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly why we have seen a number of legal actions that have been brought by experts in the last few weeks. The Center for Constitutional Rights filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court against the Biden administration for violation of the U.S.'s obligations under the Genocide Convention. We also saw the 3 leading Palestinian NGOs file a Article 15 communication before the International Criminal Court calling on it to investigate Israel's genocide in Gaza and also the apartheid regime that Israel oversees. overseas. We saw a similar petition filed by 60 politicians before the ICC. And this is consistent with the analyses of scholars that are coming out every day concluding that this is genocide. And I just want to make a point about genocidal intent. There have been over 100 statements made by the Israeli government and military since October 7th that have very clearly indicated genocidal intent. They have told us that the focus is on destruction and not accuracy. They've told us that this campaign is not about surgical strikes, but that they will obliterate civilian infrastructure. And just a few days ago, the Israeli minister, Avi Dichter, very clearly said that Israel was rolling out the Gaza Nakba. So it's very important to understand that this intent cannot be negated by the occasional reference to, no, in fact, we are just targeting Hamas. And a court that is charged with actually deciding whether or not genocide has taken place would have to assess the totality of the evidence, which clearly points in favor of genocidal intent.
Artie, how do you feel about some of the language we have heard from Israeli politicians? One Israeli politician said that one option would be using a nuclear bomb on Gaza. Another said that the Gazan people, residents, the Palestinians could go to the desert or Ireland. All of this language, you know, how painful has it been for you to hear this?
Well, extremely painful, but more than that, harrowing when one considers the source of these statements. The Jewish state holds itself out and has held itself out for 75 years as a phoenix rising from the flames of the ashes of World War II. And now you have the high command, the highest members of the highest office in Tel Aviv, proclaiming, citing the Bible passages of the Amalek and so on, proclaiming an intent very clearly to possibly commit the crime of all crimes. So this speaks not only to Palestinians and I should hope Israelis, but to all of humanity. Where have we come if we've come to this point? There is something that I think is being lost in all of the discussion, though, around particular crimes against humanity or humanitarian law violations and indeed genocide, right? We can go down that route. But there's a bigger, I think, very clear operational goal of the Israelis with respect to what's happening in Gaza. They claim to be going after Hamas, which is a political movement. I have no idea how you can end a political movement, and certainly what they've been doing with the force that they've been deploying. It seems to me to be that would only bolster that political movement in the long term. But their actions are very logical when you look at them. They've created complete disarray by bombarding wholesale the civilian population wherever they may be in the Gaza Strip. They've told the Gazan civilian population to flee south. They bomb them on their way to the south. They bomb them in the south. They're starving them through lack of food, electricity, water, and so on. And it seems to me, at the very least, leave aside genocide for the moment, at the very least, the operational plan is to depopulate the Gaza Strip of its 2.3 million people. That, of course, would continue this conflict for another few generations, if not more.
Michael, would you go along with that? Do you think that's what the game plan is here? Depopulate the Gaza Strip?
Well, we saw a very troubling op-ed by two Israeli politicians from the Knesset published earlier on this week in the Wall Street Journal, calling for the relocation of the population of Gaza elsewhere in the world, either in the Arab world or elsewhere in North America or in Europe. The word was never used in the article, but that certainly meets any classical definition of ethnic cleansing, or in law, mass forced transfer, which is a war crime very clearly. And we also see this, unfortunately, in the framing of what is going on now on this assault on Gaza. Certainly in the European press and in the North American press, the framing is the Israel-Hamas war, when it's very clearly something much different and much deeper than that. This stems not only from a 56-year-old occupation or a 75-year-old dispossession of the Palestinian people. This is meant not simply as a surgical military strike on Hamas. Far from it. It's meant to try to answer a political quandary facing Israel, because Gaza has always been the largest contradiction in the project of Israel. And how do you wind up keeping 2.3 million people fenced in a relatively small area of land? Whenever I speak on Gaza, and particularly over the last 6 weeks, I always ask my audiences, where else in the world and where else in modern history have we ever seen such a large population fenced in with no freedom of movement, with the controlling power dictating who and what goes into the area and who and what leaves the area? There's no other comparable situation in any authoritarian or dictatorial government that I'm aware of in the world today.
Well, very few world leaders are willing to call this a genocide, but one person who has is President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey. Let's have a listen to what he said recently on this issue.
We are facing a genocide. Therefore, right now, hundreds, thousands of lawyers are taking this to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. And because Israel is carrying out such a genocide, we will be making an effort to take all the necessary steps regarding the genocide and make the necessary announcement.
Joanna, what's your reading of President Erdogan's words just there?
I think it's absolutely accurate, both in terms of what's going on, calling out the genocide, and in terms of the steps that need to be taken. We have to understand that justice is the only alternative to war, as it stands. As far as we look back, if we look back at the other cases of genocide that have happened in the last few years, in 1992 in Bosnia, thousands were murdered in broad daylight in front of the cameras. In 1994 in Rwanda, 800,000 people were murdered. And in all these cases, the international community came back after everybody was dead and said, let's not let this happen again, let's have a tribunal. And I think my biggest concern is that what's going to happen to Gaza? Are we going to just let all these people die and then come and say, we should have done something?
Lara,
justice needs to happen now to prevent. The role of justice is not just to come and punish. It is very much as well in a preventative capacity that judicial intervention from the International Criminal Court that has jurisdiction and the International Court of Justice needs to happen now.
Lara, we've got world leaders who won't even call for a ceasefire. What prospect is there for anyone to come out and call this a genocide?
Well, I mean, there's always the question of political will when it comes to international law. I mean, international law is in favor of the Palestinian struggle for freedom. But unfortunately, the international institutions and the governments which have been charged to uphold international law have utterly failed over the last 7 decades to deliver any relief to Palestinians or uphold or honor their human rights. I just want to make a point about impunity. Just yesterday, the UN Security Council passed a resolution calling for extended humanitarian pauses in Israel's bombardment campaign in Gaza. And moments after it passed, you had Israel's ambassador to the UN who came out with a statement that this resolution, which is binding under international law, was, quote, meaningless, and that Israel would not comply with it. That has been Israel's approach to the UN since its establishment. And so I think it's really important for us to understand that we are in a crisis of international law and its institutions, and that the International Criminal Court in this moment has to act. Otherwise, it risks rendering itself completely obsolete and ineffective to stop mass atrocities and to uphold the international legal framework, which was developed post-World War II for the very purpose of preventing and sanctioning genocide. That's really what's at stake here. So if world leaders refuse to act, then they should understand very well what they are actually supporting and contributing to.
Ardi, I want to ask you, how many millions of people around the world are watching all of this unfold on their TV screens and feeling completely helpless? What can be done with Israel when you've got a country that behaves like this and, as our panel have been discussing, totally disregarding international law?
Yeah. There actually is a great many things that people can do. And first and foremost, speak out, put pressure on your local representatives and on your government, wherever you may be. States have obligations. In this particular case, very base obligation is to ensure respect for the terms of humanitarian law, Common Article 1 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which is being violated clearly. But how does that translate? There are also obligations under the Genocide Convention to prevent against genocide from taking place and so on. How does that translate practically? Well, at the United Nations, there are voting patterns and so on, but more, if you like, with more teeth. You have prospects of universal jurisdiction cases where states have obligations because the crimes being committed or alleged to be committed by the Israeli side are what we call core crimes at international law. All states have an interest in prosecuting them or extraditing those who order their commission or participate in their commission to other states who should prosecute them under principles of what we call universal jurisdiction. This could happen in the domestic courts of most state.
Michael, do you think the day will ever come when Benjamin Netanyahu and members of this right-wing Israeli government face justice for what has been done to the people of Gaza?
The track record so far, I'm afraid, is not very good. What I will point to is the fact that after three prior assaults on Gaza over the last 15 years, 2008-09, 2014, and during the Great March of Return in 2018. On each of those three occasions, the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva commissioned independent international reports to inquire into whether war crimes and crimes against humanity had been committed in the first two instances by Israel and Hamas, and in the third instance by Israel during the Great March of Return. And in each of those three reports, the independent commission concluded that, yes, war crimes have been committed by both sides in 2008-09 and again in 2014, and by Israel in 2018. And in each of those three reports, it pointed out that the prime reason why these assaults on Gaza and these war crimes continue is the lack of accountability and the culture of impunity. The 2009 report, sometimes known as the Goldstone Report, talked about a justice crisis in the occupied Palestinian territory. So to answer your question, would Benjamin Netanyahu, would senior Israeli military leaders and Palestinian armed groups, where appropriate, ever face justice? My hope is always high, but my expectation is rather low in these circumstances. Keep this in mind, and I think this echoes what Laura said. International law only works when there's international resolve. And unless there is the political will to actually put it into place, then it remains fine words on a page.
Joanna, you are launching a petition today, I understand. Just tell us about it and how our viewers can get involved if they wish to support it.
Well, there are several international lawyers who have come together and decided to start a petition called Justice for Gaza. Now, the idea of Justice for Gaza is to request the ICC prosecutor to take the steps that he's able to take, which is firstly to open an investigation in Gaza, it's unexplainable how to this day, more than a month after, considering the amount of death and destruction that has happened, that this has not already been done. I want to know, why is there a double standard and why it hasn't been done yet? So the idea of the petition is to request in the first step for the ICC prosecutor to do that. And secondly, for the ICC prosecutor to look at individual criminal liability. What we're saying is the individuals who are leading this policy, with the understanding that there is no justification under which you can destroy civilians in such a way, these individuals have to face justice, have to answer in a courtroom and explain themselves. If they have answers and excuses to justify what they've done, fine, we'll hear them in court. So they need to be, first of all, there needs to be a warrant of arrest against them by the ICC prosecutor. And then we'll see if we can get them to court or not. But these are the first steps. And I need to say something that's very important. Under the ICC regime, there is no state immunity. This means that there is no head of state that can claim immunity for policies enacted and for policies implemented. This is very important because this means that these individuals who are committing these crimes cannot justify the actions by the fact that it was legal. it was legal under Israeli law, because we're talking about a crime of the utmost gravity. So it is essential that people who wish to support these efforts, individuals of all walks of life, sign the petition, Justice for Gaza, and this petition will push the efforts and keep putting pressure on the ICC prosecutor to ask him to explain why are there double standards when it comes to Palestinians.
Thanks, Joanna. Lara, tell me, what will justice look like for the people of Gaza, in your view?
Well, I think we have to be asking a broader question about what will justice look like for Palestinians, who for over 7 decades have been denied the right to self-determination, and their most basic human rights continue to be violated day in and day out. I think, while Israel is certainly committing genocide, and it's important for the legitimacy of the international institutions like the ICC to investigate and prosecute this crime, we must remember that even if Israeli officials are found guilty of genocide as a result of their actions in Gaza for the last month, this still would not address the over 7 decades of injustice and impunity which has prevailed as a result of Israel's settler colonial project in Palestine. And that's really the heart of the issue. And I think that's precisely why calls for freedom from the river to the sea are so essential to the Palestinian struggle. What we are saying is that we are a people who live on the land between the river and the sea, and that we are a people whose human rights have been denied for over 7 decades. What we are not saying is that we want to deny any other group their human rights, but we are seeking the respect of our own human rights. And that's really what this is all about. That really leads us to the point that at its heart, Israel's apartheid regime must be dismantled, and that Palestinians need to see the day where they have all their human rights respected.
Ardy, how long do you think this military campaign by Israel will go on for?
I regret to say that I think it'll go on for as long as the Israelis believe it should continue until they can complete their stated goal. Their stated goal, however, is so broad, that is to destroy Hamas, their capability militarily and also civilly to govern, that will give them time to do what I think is the logical result of every one of their actions, as I mentioned earlier. We might look at what the Israelis are doing on the ground in Gaza and scratch our heads and say, well, that makes no sense. Why ever would they bombard hospitals? Why ever would they bombard refugee camps, civilian shelters, and so on? And the only rationale behind doing that is to create a great scare among the civilian population, such that they have imbued within them the idea that there's no place to be safe in Gaza, and that the only place for safety, the only place for continued life is outside of the Gaza Strip. I believe that the operational goals of the government of the State of Israel logically flow in that direction, and they will continue to do that until such time as the population of Gaza is dispersed, whether in one fell swoop over the course of another month or over time. We know the Israelis will continue to occupy physically with boots on the ground northern Gaza Strip, and quite possibly more, to sort of crunch the population into the southern portion, a population that is already besieged, a population that is in the millions, and so on. And this all leads in one direction, I'm afraid.
Ardy, and to all our panelists, thank you so much for your insight. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me and Brady and all of the team here, goodbye, and thank you for watching.